Hey guys, today I'm going to check out the Edge of Eternities archetypes, and I'm going to do a quick guide on each color pair. So there's 10 color pairs in total, and what you want to be drafting for each of those color pairs. So the first one is blue-white second spell. Cast your second spell in a turn and earn additional bonuses to overwhelm your opponent. So this is going to be all about, cheap cost cards, lots of card draw, maybe even instant spells where you're capable of playing a flash creature and an instant on your opponent's turn to get like another turn worth of triggers and payoffs. There's blue-black artifact control, which is assemble an artifact-based deck to grind out your opponent's resources turn by turn. So it's mostly just a simple control deck where the emphasis will be on artifact synergies. We've got black-red void, which is a new mechanic to the set. Basically, void will activate whenever a creature has died this turn, or a permanent has left the battlefield more accurately, or you've warped something in this turn. Void is going to be fairly easy to trigger when anything dies, when you sack a token, whenever you warp something. So it's really about making sure you have the payoffs for those void creatures. Red-green, we have Landfall and Landers. So Lander tokens are a new token. They cost 2 mana to crack, and they will give you a tapped basic land. And then Landfall triggers, as you've seen in many sets before, are just giving you a small advantage if you're able to put lots of lands down every turn. In green-white, we have +1/+1 counters, so a very familiar theme that I think you're going to have seen before in many draft formats. Essentially, you need the counters on your creatures, and then from there, you're going to have various payoffs, and you're going to have ways to trigger more and more counters on your creatures till you get to an overwhelming mass. In white-black, we have go wide, just a standard go wide strategy. You're going to want to play as many creatures as you can, get the board to go as wide as you can, and then just push through with some kind of board buffing ability, some kind of large, +2/+0 kind of ability for all your creatures. In blue-red, we have Artifact Aggro. Play cheap artifacts you've uncovered on your travels to quickly overpower the field with supreme synergies. So yeah, just a standard aggro deck, but we're going to have an emphasis on getting artifacts. Lander tokens are also going to be viable in this. In black-green, we have Graveyard Synergy. Graveyard Synergy, you would have seen a dozen times before. You're mostly trying to mill and surveil stuff into your graveyard so you get it there efficiently. Obviously, if a creature dies, it still goes to your graveyard, so you can take a longer route to get there. And then you have reanimate effects that are going to then get you excess value from the graveyard. In red-white, we have Space Stations. Space Stations are a new type of... They're almost like a vehicle, but instead of crewing them once per turn, you station them, you put a set amount of counters based on the power of the creature that stationed them, and once you reach certain breakpoints, they either gain abilities or become a creature. So there's going to be a huge emphasis on warp, because warp creatures you're placing onto the board, they can't attack because they have Summoner's Sickness, so you can tap them. But any creature you play on its first turn, you could use to station. Creatures that are there's a 4/1 defender, so that's going to be very efficient to station. And then blue-green is just a simple ramp deck. You're going to use landers and various ramping tools to allow you to play big, powerful creatures and cards. So in blue-white, we have second spell. So Station Monitor is the gold signpost uncommon. It's a white and a blue 2/2 creature lizard artificer. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, create a 1/1 colorless drone artifact creature, and it can only block things with flying, and it has flying itself. So these signpost uncommons are going to tell you a lot about the archetype and the color pair you're drafting. Here we're understanding the fact that you need to be playing lots of spells every turn to kind of get these payoffs. Tokens and artifacts are probably going to be somewhat relevant as well if you can get a lot of them. This would make you want to look at Artifact Matters cards a bit closer. Also, it's worth noting a creature like this, you could play it and then you could play as a spell after it, and that would still trigger this ability. So what I want to go through is kind of the payoff cards, and then I'll go through the cards that enable them. So the first payoff card we have is the Bright Spear Zealot. It's a 2 and a white, 2/4 creature human soldier. It has vigilance, and it gets +2/+0 as long as you've cast 2 or more spells this turn. 2 and a 4, 2/4 free mana, I'd probably look at that and say it's pretty weak. The buff isn't amazing, a +2/+0. If you play 2 spells, it makes it a 4/4. Has vigilance, which is nice. I would probably say this is fairly average as far as cards go. Then we have the Ilvoy Operative, a 1 and a blue, 2/1 creature jellyfish rogue. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, put a 1/1 counter on this creature. I like that a lot. A 2/1 for 2 mana is not bad. And then the idea you're going to just be able to grow this pretty much every turn. I think that's going to be pretty reliably solid. It should be reminiscent of something like Sahagin from Final Fantasy, where you're putting down a very cheap creature, but because it's growing, it's going to stay relevant for the rest of the game, probably. Next up, we have the Sunstar Lightsmith for 3 and a white, 3/3 creature human artificer. Whenever you cast a second spell each turn, put a 1/1 counter on this creature and draw a card. So 1/1 counters, they're going to stick around. This is going to get quite big very quickly. Being able to draw cards is going to be so important to enable these payoffs, because you're going to need to be playing, in my mind, a lot of like 1-cost, 2-cost cards that kind of cycle themselves, so you're constantly being able to trigger this second spell effect. And then for 2 and a blue, we've got the Ufros Scientist. It's a 2/4 creature jellyfish scientist, and it makes every second spell you cast each turn cost 2 less. This is huge, because essentially you could have a 2 free costs, have 4 mana, and you can play 1 for free, 1 for 1. It's going to allow you to really easily hit that second spell, even if you don't have a lot of mana on board. So this is both kind of like a payoff in the fact that having a lot of card draws, so you have a lot of stuff to play very cheaply, you're taking advantage of that, but it's also enabling you to play all that stuff as well. So this seems like a card that would be pretty core, especially if you're heavily buying into this archetype. Next, we have Gigastorm Titan. It's 4 and a blue, 4/4 creature elemental. This spell costs 3 less to cast if it's your second spell this turn. Or if you cast another spell this turn, more accurately. Theoretically, it's a 2 mana 4/4. That if you say you play a 1 mana card, you could play this on free and it's a 4/4. And it only costs you 2 mana. It seems really efficient, like a really efficient and strong card. I think you're probably going to want this in probably any blue deck, I would imagine. It's just such a simply easy to cast big creature. I guess it gets worse if you don't have a lot of 1 or 2 drops. It's kind of harder to cast something like this, but if you have a lot of them, this is castable on turn 4 as well as a 4/4, and you're getting it on a good mana curve, I guess. So yeah, I would say this is pretty solid. We have the Ilvoy Infiltrator for 2 and a blue. It's a 1/3 creature jellyfish rogue. This creature can't be blocked if you cast 2 or more spells this turn. Whenever this creature deals combat to a player, draw a card. So, I mean, you could cast this, theoretically cast something else. Obviously, it comes down with Summon the Sickness, so that doesn't work. But I mean, again, if you're getting the 2 spells off, which should be doable, there's a lot of really cheap 1-cost cards that do like card draw and stuff like that. You're going to be able to damage your opponent, be unblockable, and you're going to draw even more cards, so you can cast even more 2 spells. This seems good, and I feel like the archetype overall seems really well supported from what I've seen so far and what I've also looked at earlier. So I'm going to cover some of these cheap enablers, cards that help you casting your second spell each turn because they're cheap to cast, and in that sense, you can cast them very easily. We've got an enchantment aura that does -5, -0 on the enchanted creature, and when it becomes tapped, destroy that creature. So not great if it has a strong activated or passive ability, but pretty much this will handle most big creatures for you, or most creatures at all. And it only costs 1 mana, so you could play this on another card quite easily. Reroute systems, you can choose one of these effects, either either deal 2 damage to a target creature, or give indestructible to an artifact or a creature until the end of the turn. Again, 1 mana, instant speed. This is going to be super useful. It's flexible between a kind of light removal spell to a magic dampener kind of effect from Final Fantasy. Yeah, both these cards will very easily enable you to cast multiple cards a turn. Other cheap enablers, we've got Seam Rip. It's a white enchantment. When this enchantment enters, exile target non-land opponent and opponent controls with mana value 2 or less until this enchantment leaves the battlefield. So yeah, enchantment removal. Obviously, if it gets destroyed, the creature or permanent will go back to the board, and it can only target mana value 2 or less, but it's still a fairly good card. Again, I would almost argue the effects, while not amazing, because mana value 2 or less isn't super impactful for removal, I think really where a card like this will shine is specifically in this archetype. We have Squire's Lightblade, a white artifact equipment. It has flash, so again, there's a lot of flash, a lot of instant stuff that you could potentially get a double trigger on your opponent's turn. When this equipment enters, attach it to a target creature you control. That creature gains first strike. So this is essentially like a combat trick that will stick around and give +1/+0 on other turns. 1 mana to cast. 1 mana to cast. Again, yeah, really solid, reliable effects. You know, if you weren't looking to get the second spell payoff, these cards are a little low impact, I would say, but knowing the payoffs you can get, I think these cards are definitely worth it. We have Honor. It's a sorcery spell for 1 white that puts a 1/1 counter on your target creature and then draws you a card. A great example of what you're looking for, because it's a card draw enabler. So it's cheap to cast, and then it's going to give you more cards to cast, so it makes sure you can get that second spell every turn. We have Nutrient Block for 1 mana. It's an artifact food. It is indestructible, and then you can sacrifice it to gain free life. Whenever it enters the graveyard from the battlefield, draw a card. So this is a really reliable way to just cycle, get a bit of life, get a card, play something for 1 mana, but whilst doing all of that, again, allowing you to trigger all those second spells. Card draw enablers, we've got Cryogen Relic. It's an artifact for 1 and a blue. When this artifact enters or leaves the battlefield, draw a card, and then for 1 and a blue, you can sacrifice it to put a stun counter on up to 1 target tapped creature. So you're stunning a tapped creature, which is good tempo, or I guess it's bad tempo for your opponent, and then you're eventually going to draw 2 cards of this. Fairly cheap as well. 2 mana's not crazy. 2 card draws eventually. It will cost you 4 mana in total. It's a slow card, but it also slows your opponent down. But it's getting you card draw. It's really going to get you what you're looking for, I think. I think it's going to be fairly solid and limited. Card draw is kind of a premium thing that I think you'll want in most decks, because it's, you know, it's the most reliable way to get card advantage. We have Mental Modulation for 1 and a blue. This spell costs 1 less to cast during your turn. Tap target artifact or creature and draw a card. So it's 1 mana on your turn, because the tap effect isn't as effective or useful, but so it would just be draw a card. But if you're playing it on your opponent's turn, it's only 1 mana and you can stop them from attacking for at least 1 turn, and it cycles itself. Again, these sorts of 1 mana, 2 mana cards, not huge impact, but if you're getting all your payoffs from them, they're going to be super valuable. Another way to enable your second spell will be warp cards. Warp cards are always creatures, or mostly creatures, that can be cast for a cheaper cost. They come down onto the board, and then at the end of your turn, they'll just go into exile, and then you can play them for their full cost. Realistically, the main upside here is just the fact that they're a large spell that will have impact late game, but you can play early game to trigger the second spell effect, and most of these have enter effects that are going to have a positive impact on your game. So we have All Fate's Stalker, 3 and a white. 2/3 creature Drix Assassin. When this creature enters, exile up to one target non-assassin creature until this creature leaves the battlefield. And then it's warp 1 and a white. So essentially what this will do when you warp it is it's going to allow you to flicker a creature. So if you have an enters effect that you want to flicker on, that's fantastic. Theoretically, you could get rid of a creature your opponent controls that has a lot of like +1/+1 counters, which will be super high impact, I think, in this format to be able to do that. And then obviously when you play it for its full cost, it's just a straight up kind of enchantment style removal where you're exiling something until this creature dies. Then we have Starfield Shepherd for 3 and a double white. 3/2 creature angel with flying. When this creature enters, search your library for a basic plains card or a creature card with mana value 1 or less. Reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. It's warp 1 and a white. It's just card draw basically, right? Card draw, whether you need a spell or plains card, it's going to make it very easy to second spell because you can warp it in for 2. Pull out a 1 mana value card, play that as well. That's going to cost you 3 mana. You've already got your second spells enabled, and you've gotten a card draw from it essentially. Yeah, I think this will be a very strong, reliable enabler. 5 mana for the 3/2 flying body. Late game, not as great, but really you can view it as like draw 2 specific cards. I'd probably say this is very strong, all said and done, even though the 5 mana aspect's a little tough. But I think it's doable, and it's a 3/2 fly, it's fine. So then I also put this here as an alternative payoff. Just generally speaking, cards that benefit from you playing lots of cards a turn will be good for you. So Halia, Guided by Light, 2 and a white, 3/3 legendary creature, human soldier. Whenever Halia or another creature or artifact you control enters, you gain a life. At the beginning of your end step, draw a card if you've gained 3 or more life, and then you can warp this end for 1. So essentially, you know, whenever you've played this card or a creature, you're going to gain a life. So if you can play this and 2 other spells, and then theoretically, when this is on the board, you can just play 2 spells and you're going to get to draw a card and you're going to get quite a bit of life. I guess technically you do need to play 3 cards because you need to get all 3 life. So it's always 3 cards, but it includes this card. This is going to be a pretty solid engine for you. If you can get this on the board, it stays alive, and you're just card drawing, playing all these small cards. You're just going to very quickly overwhelm your opponent and get even more life gain, even more card draw. And so in summary, I would say you need to make sure you have cheap cards for this archetype. You need to make sure you have card draw, and you need to make sure you have enough payoffs that are going to really benefit from this archetype and casting those second spells. It's worth mentioning I mostly just am covering the uncommons and commons in this archetype. Obviously there's going to be rare payoffs and enablers for it, but you're just going to see those not that often in draft, or they're a little bit rarer to see. So the main bulk of your deck, the kind of bread and butter that you're going to have, is going to be these uncommons. So these are the cards I feel like you will really want to look out for and try and work your deck around. Next we have artifact control. It's black and blue, and this is our gold signpost uncommon. It's Alpha Rail, Dreaming Acolyte, 1 blue and a black, 2/3 legendary human cleric. When Alpha Rail enters, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards unless you discarded an artifact, and during your turn he has Death Touch. 2/3 Death Toucher for 3 mana's fine. Death Touch during your turn, not as defensive, but still okay. I mean, if you're able to discard an artifact, this is essentially a draw +1 and then cycle some bad cards out. Pretty solid, nothing crazy, but yeah, ultimately this archetype's going to be all about control. So card draw, removal, efficiency, and then I feel like this card does that quite well. And then obviously there's an artifact payoff. So if we go through, we can look at what payoff cards we have, cards that benefit from an artifact being played. We have Embrace Oblivion for a black. It's a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice an artifact or a creature, destroy a target creature or spacecraft. 1 mana removal at sorcery speed is probably still good. I mean, sorcery speed removal is not insane, but it's very good. The fact that you have to sacrifice something can be tough, so you're going to want to make sure you're generating a lot of like tokens or, you know, just expendable, sackable stuff. Like there's the nutrient block foods that draws a card once you destroy it. So something like this would be perfect with that. And then being able to also destroy spacecraft is probably going to be quite impactful too. So that's going to be a really solid removal card that's going to benefit from you having a lot of artifacts on board. We have Gravblade Heavy. It's 3 and a black, 3/4, creature, human, soldier. As long as you control an artifact, it gets +1/+0 and has Death Touch. A 4/4 Death Toucher. Death Touch becomes a lot weaker once you have a stronger, bigger bodied creature. Being a conditional 4/4 for 4 mana seems a little understated to me. It's not crazy. The Death Touch does allow it to trade with bigger creatures. I'm not entirely sure I would pick this highly. It's probably filler at best for this deck. Other payoffs we have is Spellcraft Mechan. It's 3 and a blue. It's an artifact creature, robot artificer. It's a 3/4 body, and when this creature enters, you may sacrifice an artifact. When you do, put a 1/1 counter on target creature and draw a card. I mean, a 1/1 counter and card draw, if you sack an artifact, you're definitely going to want to make sure you have a lot of like tokenized artifacts that aren't super, you know, super valuable to you if you want to make these sorts of trades worth it. It's a 4 mana 3/4. It's fine. Being able to cycle through your artifacts and draw cards and get counters, I think that can be, it could be a good card, though. Again, I think you want to make sure you have artifacts that are worth like sacking, that don't have a lot of value to you. And we also have Swarm Color. It's 3 and a black, 2/4 creature, insect, warrior. It has flying, and when this creature becomes tapped, you may sacrifice another artifact or creature. If you do, draw a card. So similar to the other card, but this one has flying. It has slightly lower stats, but the big payoff is whether you're tapping it for a station or you're tapping it to attack, and because it's a fly, it should attack quite easily. Basically, every single turn you're going to be able to make that sacrifice, and then from that sacrifice, you're going to be able to draw a lot of cards. Again, really, if anything, this isn't just an artifact deck. It is a deck that needs like cheap, easy to like sacrifice artifacts, I think. It's also worth noting the Spellcraft Mechan is an artifact itself, and if we go up, no, there isn't another artifact, but you will see a lot of these cards are actually artifacts themselves. So another payoff we have is the Mechan Shieldmate. 1 and a blue, 3/2 artifact creature, robot soldier. It has defender, but as long as an artifact entered this turn, this creature can attack as though it didn't have defender. A 3/2 that is in a conditional attacker for 2 mana is mediocre, I'd say. Defender's not great to have. It's a little conditional. It's an artifact itself, but I don't know, it trades up. I guess that's true. Like to a 3/3 or a 4/3, it trades decently. I feel like it's more filler than strong, but you know, it's fine. Now this next card, the Monoist Circuit Feeder, 4 and 2 blacks, a 4/4 artifact creature, Nautilus. It has flying. When this creature enters, until end of turn, target creature you control gets +X/+0, and target creature an opponent controls gets -0/-X, where X is the number of artifacts you control. So if you have a lot of artifacts, this is going to be a strong removal card. It is an artifact itself, and then on top of that, it's going to give you stats to push through on, and then it's a flying 4/4 for 6 mana. That's already like not crazy. This is, you know, maybe reminiscent of like Cloud of Darkness. It's removal and a decent flyer, but then it's even more because it's giving you artifact synergies, it's giving you excess damage. This is probably one of the most premium, if not the #1 uncommon for this archetype. So this is a card you're going to want to look out for a lot. It is 6 mana, so you probably don't want more than 2 of them in your deck. But I would probably say it's still, you might want 2 or 3. It's that good. Other payoffs we have are the Mechan Assembler for 4 and a blue. It's a 4/4 artifact creature, robot artificer. Whenever another artifact you control enters, create a 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token. This ability only triggers once per turn. So as what I was saying earlier, you want lots of like token creatures, stuff that you can actually sack, stuff that's not super valuable. A 2/2 artifact creature token is kind of in that ballpark. This is something that every single turn you could potentially be generating tokens, generating board presence. The body itself is a 4/4, which isn't horrible. 5 mana is a bit tough, but not horrible either. I think this is going to be pretty core and key in this deck. It's going to be a very solid payoff for you. Next up, we have the Lightless Evangel. 1 and a black, 2/2 creature vampiric cleric. Vampire cleric. Whenever you sacrifice another creature or artifact, put a 1/1 counter on this creature. So this is just on the side while you're going through all those sack things that you have going on, sacked targets. This is just going to slowly get bigger and better and going to be having more impact. So I think it's important to understand this theme isn't just artifact control, it's almost artifact sacrifice control. And I think that might be a better way of framing it in your mind. More payoffs we have here. We have Umbral Collar Zealot, 1 and a black, 3/2 creature human cleric. Sack another creature or artifact and surveil 1. Sacking an artifact or even a creature for just the surveil more often than not is pretty weak, but as we just talked about that last card, the one that gets +1/+1 counters here, it's important to realize that we're probably getting payoffs when we sack, and so there might be more than just the surveil as the payoff for sacking these artifacts. And there are artifacts you want to put in that do want sacking eventually, like I think it's called the Nutrient Block. So I think this will be a solid 2-drop. It is a free 2 for 2, which is a good stat line. I mean, I think this will be a solid, like, more filler than anything, but like you could run a couple of these in this deck just to make sure your curve's good. This next card's super interesting. It's a bit of a build around. It's Virulent Silencer, 3 mana, 2/3 artifact creature robot assassin. Whenever non-token artifact creature you control deals combat damage to a player, this player gets 2 poison counters. When this is on the board, theoretically you just need to hit your opponent 5 times with 5 artifact creatures, and then you're going to kill your opponent, right? That's one way of thinking of it. They can't be tokens, and I do feel like there will be a few token artifacts, so that's worth noting. But if you get a reliable, like, hasted artifact or flying artifact, or, you know, just a way to push through, this on the board could definitely catch your opponent by surprise and, like, potentially win you the game. I'm not sure if this card's going to be fully supported and this is going to be something you can reliably do. But I mean, if there's enough cards that make it work, this would be almost an archetype unto itself. I don't think there's too many other poison cards though in this set. Other payoffs we have here is Scrounge for Eternity. It's 2 and a black sorcery. As an additional cost to cast a spell, you sack an artifact or a creature. Return target creature or spacecraft card with mana value 5 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, then create a lander token. So you're sacking a creature or an artifact and you're getting a creature or spacecraft mana value 5 or less onto the battlefield. That's pretty solid. And then you're getting a lander token. I think this is going to be premium. I think this is gonna, in any black deck, it's a reanimate effect for 3 mana, and there's gonna be bad 1-drop token creatures and artifacts probably flying around. Even a lander token gets completely recycled here and you get it back. I think this will be strong in any black color pair. Yeah, it seems very solid. I kind of don't see any downside to it, honestly. I think it's solid. It's not instant speed, but normally reanimate effects aren't, so yeah, I think this is kind of pushed. It's great, really. The next card is the Suzerain Vordborn. 2 and a black, 2/2 creature, vampire soldier. Whenever this creature or another creature or artifact you control dies, target opponent loses 1 life and gain 1 life. And you gain 1 life. You can warp it in for 1. Okay, this is kind of going back to the theme I said earlier, where like you're going to have creatures on the board that are just benefiting from you sacking stuff. You're getting life, you're getting tokens, you're getting +1/+1, and then you have a lot of spells and stuff that are asking you to sack stuff. This is really sacrifice artifacts more than anything. Obviously, I think control will be a big element. It's a lot of card draw, life gain, removal. But yeah, this archetype seems pretty good too. There's definitely some solid cards here. Some cards a bit weaker than others, but I definitely think this is one that you're going to be able to make work. I just wanted to talk about the enablers. Now, it's worth noting there's over 40 artifacts in blue-black that will be essentially good for you. So I'm not going to go through every single one of those and talk about every single one, but I'm just going to go over some uncommon and common artifacts that I think will fit into this deck nicely. We have the Cryogen Relic. It's a 1 and a blue. We talked about it earlier, but essentially when you're putting this artifact into the battlefield, or when it leaves the battlefield, you draw a card and you can sack it to put a stun counter on a target tapped creature. So it's buying you tempo, it's buying you sack synergy, it's buying you cards, it's fantastic, it's cheap, it's giving you artifact synergy as well. I think this will be pretty core and pretty fundamental to your artifact blue-black decks. Ilvoy Lightjammer, 1 and a blue, artifact equipment. This is a flash equipment that when you play it, it attaches to a creature. That creature gains hexproof, so that's going to be huge, right? You're going to be able to completely nullify a removal spell of your opponent, and then even after nullifying that person's removal, you're then getting a +1/+2 piece of equipment on the board on your creature, and then you can re-equip it for free. It's a solid artifact. I think this is going to be fairly desirable. It's a bit of a combat trick, a bit of a safety measure. It's also an okay-ish, it's kind of maybe bad even, equipment, if that's all you're using it for. But if you need artifacts, if you need hexproof, I mean, I feel like this will be pretty solid, all said and done. Other artifacts, I talked about the Nutrient Block. It's a 1 mana food token that when you sack it, you draw a card. And then Virulent Silencer, again, another, it itself is, and even though it's a payoff, it itself is an artifact. So it's just worth noting, like, a lot of these creatures you're going to come across are also artifacts themselves. It's also worth noting landers are going to be really important. It's a cheap way to get artifact tokens onto the board. So this is a counter spell for 1 and a blue. It's instant, obviously, and unless its controller pays 2 to stop the counter effect, it will go through, and then obviously if they pay the 2, it will create a lander token. So it's a counter spell that on the downside it creates you a lander token, which in of itself is pretty strong anyway. And then we have the Beamsaw Prospector, 1 and a black, creature human artificer for it's 2 and a 1. When this creature dies, create a lander token. So simple. You put this down, you sack it, you get a lander token, you sack the lander token. You kind of have an ongoing source of sacking available to you. This is going to be really solid. A 2/1 for 2 manas, whatever, but like you're probably putting this into your deck hoping to sack it at some point. And then obviously the theme is control, so it's important to make sure you have cards that will make up any great control deck. Removal, card draw, I'm thinking of especially. And I think of things like Depressurize, 1 and a black instant. Target creature gets -3/-0 until the end of turn. And then if that creature's power is 0 or less, you destroy it. It's a pretty efficient removal. It's going to hit a lot of targets. And then you have Grav Kill, just exile target creature or spacecraft at instant speed. So exile is going to be important, so it's going to be good against any Graveyard Matters decks, and it's instant speed as well, so you're going to be able to catch your opponent off guard with this card. Other premium control cards, we have Vote Out. It's 3 and a black. It's a sorcery, destroy target creature, but you can convoke it, so that means you can tap creatures, and each creature you tap helps pay for 1 mana for this. So if you have a lot of cheap tokens on the board, you can convoke this out, and it can be a 1 mana destroy target creature spell, which is fantastic. And then Sculpting Blast is also fantastic. It's 1 and a blue, instant, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. If it was attacking, create a 1/1 colorless drone that has flying and it can only block other flyers. So this is a fantastic bounce spell that can hit non-land permanents, so there's a lot of cheeky stuff you can do there. And if you hit a creature that's attacking you specifically, you get a little drone token that will feed into that sacrifice synergy that you're really looking for. Cool. To summarize, you're going to want artifacts, you're going to want card draw, and you're going to want efficient removal. So here we have the Cryogen Relic. It's an artifact that draws you cards. You have the Monolith Circuit Feeder. It's an artifact that's going to remove your opponent's cards, buff your cards, and it's a 4/4 flyer, so it's just solid. And if you have Alpha Rail at any point, you could always play it, discard one of these artifacts in hand, and then you get to draw 2 cards essentially for free. And it's a 2/3 Death Touch defender. Well, it doesn't have defender, but on defense it has Death Touch. These are the sort of cards that are really going to build up this deck. And I'll just reiterate, like, you probably want a few artifact tokens or things that have a lot of sack synergy or going on in this deck. So a cheap way of getting artifacts and like payoffs that are giving you bonuses every time you sack something as well. Okay, now we're on to the Void archetype. Use Void mechanic at the cost of creatures and artifacts, then trigger devastating events. We have the Interceptor Mechan. It's 2 and a black red. 2/2 artifact creature robot flying. When this creature enters, return target artifact or creature from your graveyard to your hand. That's huge. And then if you have Void at the beginning of your end step, if a non-land permanent left the battlefield or a spell was warped this turn, put a 1/1 counter on this. So it's a 2/2 flyer that's going to grow every time something dies, every time you warp something. And on top of that, it's pulling something from your graveyard back into your hand like an artifact or a creature. This card seems bonkers strong. And as far as gold signpost uncommons go, it pretty much tells you everything you need to know. Strong card, and then it's just getting more payoffs from the Void synergy. So you're going to want to have a lot of warp cards, or you're going to want to have a lot of removal that are going to trigger these Voids, and then you want the Void payoff. So if we go through and look at those Void payoffs, we have Decode Transmissions, 2 and a black. It's a sorcery. You draw 2 cards and you lose 2 life. But if you have Void triggered, you draw 2 cards and your opponent loses 2 life. So not a huge upside if you have Void. It just means instead of you losing 2 life, your opponent loses 2 life. So it's a 4 life swing if you have Void, but otherwise it's a perfectly playable card anyway. Insatiable Skittermaw, 2 and a black, 2/2 creature insect horror. It has menace and it also has Void. And then if you Void, you put a 1/1 counter on this creature. So assuming you play it down on a turn that maybe something died, or you warp something, comes down, it'll quickly turn into a 3/3. 3/3 menace for free is good, not crazy. I think eventually, this gets out of hand. So this is a card that, I could see a world in which if you trigger enough Void every turn, this does become kind of dangerous. So it's something your opponent will have to eventually answer. We have Plasma Bolt. It's a red mana, 1 red mana sorcery. Deals 2 damage to any target, but if you have Void trigger, it deals 3 damage instead. I mean, it's a shock. A sorcery speed shock that with Void does slightly more damage. I think that's a huge card. I think that's going to be premium. I think you're going to want it in pretty much every red deck, honestly. We have Caveron Skywarden. It's 4 and a red, creature Kavu soldier. It's a 4/5 with reach. It has Void, and then it just gets a +1/+1 counter on this creature if you trigger Void. So Void so far seems like it's got a lot of +1/+1 counters, so your board state's just going to grow bigger and bigger and bigger. And even if your opponent's using removal, if you have a few creatures on the board doing that, it's kind of feeding into your synergy anyway. Other payoffs are Temporal Intervention, 2 and a black. It's a sorcery. It's a void. The spell costs 2 less if you have void triggered. So it just costs 1 black, and it targets opponent. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it, and that player discards that card. So it's a 1 mana discard spell, basically, if you have void triggered. Seems good. It's a non-land card. The fact that you need void for it and that it's normally free, I could see this being very average, all said and done. But if this is an effect you're looking for in your deck, or you're looking for more sorcery spells or something along that line, I could see this being okay, being decent-ish. We have the Hilderblade. It's 1 black, and it's an artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +3/+1. At the beginning of your end step, if a non-land opponent left the battlefield this turn, or a spell was warped, attach this equipment to a target creature. So it's a weapon that's just going to reattach constantly for free, essentially. Normally it costs 4, and it's a +3/+1, and it's 1 mana. I think this is premium. I think this is strong as hell in this deck. Maybe in other black decks, maybe it doesn't... No, I think it's good in all black decks, probably. But yeah, if you're triggering Void a lot and you have lots of ways to trigger Void, this just is a super powerful, super efficient, cheap equipment, really. We have Hymn of the Faller, 1 and a black, sorcery. Surveil 1, then draw a card and you lose 1 life. If a non-land opponent left the battlefield this turn or a spell was warped, you draw 2 cards instead. 2 mana, draw 2 cards, lose a life. Surveil 1 is strong, is very strong. It's not instant speed, but I don't think that's at the end of the world. I think, yeah, I mean, this archetype looks really good to me. I think a lot of these cards are just good. I do think you need to be triggering Void for a lot of the payoffs, and I guess that could be tough because you need stuff on the board that's dying, or you need to be sacking tokens or something. But these cards seem pretty decently statted even without the Void payoff, so I think this is going to be a pretty strong archetype. Roving Actuator is 3 and a red, artifact creature robot. It's a 3/4 body, and then obviously it has Void, and if Void is triggered, you exile up to 1 target instant or sorcery card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard. Copy it. You may cast that copy without paying its mana cost. So basically, it's a 3/4 for 4 mana. You play it on a turn where you've triggered Void, and then you get to play a 2 mana cost spell from your graveyard for free, which is pretty good too. I mean, a 3/4 for 4 mana isn't great. Probably not that strong without the Void trigger. I think with the Void trigger, this becomes very strong though. Yeah, I just think it's a very solid card, but you do need the trigger. We then have Tragic Trajectory. It's a sorcery for 1 black. It's a -2/-2 for a target creature until end of turn. But if you have Void, it's -10/-10. So small, bitty removal normally, but if you trigger Void, it can pretty much remove anything in the set, or nearly anything. Premium removal, like any other premium removal, you're going to want a lot of this, and you're going to highly prioritize it. We have Void Forged Titan. It's 4 and a black, artifact creature robot warrior. At the beginning of your end step, if a non-land opponent left the battlefield this turn or a spell was warped this turn, you draw a card and lose 1 life. 5 mana, 5/4, decent body. The fact it's drawing you a card a lot of the time is also pretty solid. Now I want to talk about the enablers. So the main form of enablers are going to be things like removal and warp. Here we're talking about removal. So we have Vote Out again that I've talked about earlier. It's 3 and a black. You can convoke out this spell and it destroys a target creature. So again, premium removal, even if you're playing 4 mana for it, good removal. And what's great about this is it's going to trigger all your voids on the end of the turn. Also, something I just realized I haven't mentioned at all. These void triggers are triggering at the end of every single turn. So for the creatures, they're triggering again and again and again. So they're going to be really powerful, I think. We also have Depressurize, 1 and a black. Target creature gets -3/-0 until end of turn. If that creature's power goes below 0 or less, destroy it. Very solid, good removal. It's going to really help you enable your voids. Now, another way to enable the voids, as I said, is warp, and these creatures have warp. Timeline color is black, haste, 2/2. You may cast this card from your graveyard using its warp ability. It costs 1 black and 2 life to pay for the warp. So you can play this for 2, haste, run it into something, it dies. You then can play it from the graveyard again for black and 2, comes back out, it has haste, you've run it into something, it dies. This will allow you to basically, for 1 mana every single turn, trigger void. It will cost you 2 life, but it's probably worth it. There's a lot of lose life, pay life in this color pair, so you do probably want to take care of that and make sure you're not overspending your life, essentially. We have Memorial Team Leader, 3 and a red. It's a creature Kavu soldier. During your turn, other creatures you control get +1/+0, and you can warp it out for 2. So just a simple creature. I think it's nothing crazy. Just the fact you're able to get warp out will enable your voids, and that might take this from like a filler creature that you don't really care about too much to something that's reliably getting you a lot of upside. So the summary for this color pair is simple. You want the void payoffs, you want removal, and you want warp. Obviously, the gold signpost uncommon is a great example of that. Vote out's a great piece of removal. And then you have something like the Perigee Beckoneer, 4 and a black creature horror. When this creature enters until end of turn, another target creature you control gets +2/+0, and gains when this creature dies, return to the battlefield. So you're able to warp this in, but also when you play it normally, you can give a creature basically the ability to die and come back for free, which again is going to trigger your voids. And so you're triggering, this has multiple ways of triggering void. It's going to be super reliable. I think as long as you can keep your life total high, this archetype is going to be very strong, and you're just going to get payoff after payoff after payoff as long as you can keep your void creatures on the board. Okay, now we're on to landers and landfall. Use lander tokens and landfall to create mana advantage. Landers can help trigger landfall more easily. And the gold signpost uncommon is Tanuk Memorial Ensign, 1 and a red and a green. It's a 2/4 legendary creature, Kavu pilot. It has landfall. Whenever land you control enters, Tanuk deals 1 damage to each opponent. If this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, draw a card. So yeah, essentially you're going to want to be playing out your lands, triggering landers so that you're getting 2 lands a turn, and then if you can do that while this card is on the board, you're going to get just card draw every single turn. It's going to be fantastic. Yeah, it seems like a pretty good card, decently statted. It's going to ping your opponent a fair bit, even if you don't get 2 lands a turn, but this whole archetype's all around landers, so you should be able to pretty reliably get quite a lot of land down. 2 a turn is a push because you have to have a land in hand and a lander token, but seems still quite doable. Next up we have Ice Cave Crasher for 3 and a green. It's a 4/4 with trample. So decent stats for 4 mana. And then landfall, whenever land you control enters, this creature gets +1/+0 till the end of turn. Obviously, if you play multiple lands, it will become like a 6/4, 7/4, etc. Decent creature, nothing too crazy, but I think you'll be able to, you know, reliably like fill out a deck with something like this. I wouldn't say it's premium or anything like that. Then we have the Slag Drill Scrapper. For 1 red, it's a 1/2 artifact creature robot scout, and then you can tap it and pay 2, and you sack another artifact or land, and you draw a card. So it's interesting because obviously a 1 mana 1/2 is nothing to, you know, nothing special. But then the ability to sack artifacts and draw cards or sack lands, it allows you to convert those excess lander tokens and excess land cards into useful stuff, and it only costs 2. I think that's fairly solid, and theoretically you can sack tapped land so you're not losing that specific mana on that turn. I think this could be pretty premium, pretty good, and pretty reliable way to get card draw in this color pair. Next, we have the Eumidian Terrabotness. It's 1 and a green. It's a landfall. Whenever land you control enters, you gain 1 life, and it's a 2/3. Pretty simple. 2/3 is a decent stat line for a 2-drop. And gaining a land a turn is... Not a land, sorry. A life a turn is pretty good. Pretty solid, I think. As far as 2-drops go, this is probably what you're going to be looking for, really, in this deck. Or this color pair, at least. Then we have Use Social Engineering. 3 and a green, enchantment, landfall. Whenever land you control enters, create a 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token. And you can also warp it in. So it's essentially the Chocobo race course from Final Fantasy, but slightly better. Harder to cast because it's 2 green, but that's not a big deal on a 5-mana card. But the fact you can warp it in for 2, play a land, get a 2/2, I think this is markedly better, and probably in a world where you have lander tokens as well, this is going to be a really solid way to get a lot of like 2/2s and get a very wide board. Normally cards like this are pretty slow, but I think this could work in this format quite nicely. Next, another payoff that we have is the Larval Scoutlander. It's an artifact spacecraft that costs 2 and a green. When this spacecraft enters, you may sack a land or lander, and then if you do, search your library for 2 basic land cards and put them onto the battlefield tapped. The ability to basically blow up a lander for 3 mana and get 2 lands is huge amount of ramp. It's kind of good tempo, weirdly, right? And you're also getting a spacecraft that eventually, once you station up, is a 3/3 flyer. I think in this archetype, this is going to be premium. I think in most green decks, it's going to be good regardless. You can sack a land to get 1 bonus land. So even worst case scenario, it's a land, 2 lands for 1. Best case scenario, you're getting 2 lands for a lander, which is... You could argue the lander is eventually going to be a land, but that costs you 2 mana. So it's like quite a good tempo swing in that sense. You're not having to crack the lander. I would say that's, you know, this is the sort of card you definitely want to be picking up in this color pair. Remnant Elemental is a 1 and a red. It's a creature elemental. It's a 0/4 body, has reach, and then whenever you get landfall, it gets +2/+0. The idea that every turn you play a land, your 2-drop is a 2/4 with reach. I mean, even just as a 0/4 was reach, that's going to save you a lot of life. But then on those turns that you do drop land, you could potentially poke in for 2. Or if you drop 2 lands, you're poking in for 4. Solid 2-drop, super reliable, defensive. And again, this is a landfall landed archetype, but you're also trying to ramp up by getting all these lands out. And something that's defensively statted as 0/4 is going to buy you a lot of time to ramp up, especially that it has reach. I think this is going to be surprisingly good. I think it's better than its like stat line would have you believe. So I think it's a card to look out for also. Next up we have the Survey Mechan. It's a 4 mana 1/3 artifact creature robot, has flying and it has hexproof. And then you can sack this creature and it deals 3 damage to any target. Target player draws 3 cards and gains 3 life. And then also this ability costs X less to activate, where X is the number of differently named lands you controlled. So to simplify this, this is essentially, if you have a lot of different lands on your board, this is going to be cheaper than 10 mana. And then you're going to be able to deal 3 damage, draw 3 cards, and gain 3 life. And then, I mean, yeah, if you've got 5 lands, 5 different named lands, for 5 mana, this is probably a really solid, you know, it's removal, it's card draw, it's life gain. And then a 1/3 flying was hexproof for 4 mana. I'd probably say that's kind of understated. Sure, if you buff it up, it has hexproof and it is a flyer, but I think you really want to only play this if you have a deck that's got a lot of different types of lands. You don't want a basic like forest mountain deck playing this, I don't think. This is almost a side synergy. There's quite a few cards that care about the names of the cards or having all 5 colors. So I think this is more of a 5-color card, or you got a bunch of rare lands card, rather than a super standard green red card. Next we have the Territorial Bruntar. It's 4 and 2 red pips. It's 6/6 creature beast with reach, and whenever you play a land, you exile a card until you exile a non-land card, and you may cast that card this turn. You do have to pay for it still. This is a very good way of it's essentially like pseudo card draw, not as strong as card draw, but it's kind of there, and all it requires from you is to play a land. And a 6/6 for 6 isn't horrible anyway. I think this is super playable. It's a super good top end for a deck like this, and you'll probably be able to afford it quite easily given all the lander tokens you'll be generating. Okay, now I want to move on to the enablers, cards that are going to allow you to play more lands, or cards that are going to get you more landers to kind of enable those payoffs we've been talking about. We have Galactic Wayfarer. It's 2 and a green. It's a free creature human scout. When this creature enters, create a lander token. Simple as can be. It's a free for free, which is solid, and you're getting a lander token, which is what this deck fundamentally is going to be needing. Cav Landseeker, it's 3 and a red, 4/3 creature Cavu soldier. It has a menace, and when this creature enters, create a lander token, but you do sack it at the end of your next turn. So this is a lander token that you have to use, essentially, or it's going to go away. So these are both decently statted creatures that are the sort of ways you're going to be able to get some landers. We have Orbital Plunge. It's 3 and a red. Orbital Plunge deals 6 damage to a target creature. If any excess damage was dealt to that creature, so it has less than 6 toughness, you create a lander token. This is solid removal, and it's a lander token. I mean, it's a dream in this deck. And then you have Sammy's Curiosity, 1 green. You gain 2 life, create a lander token. Not amazing, but 1 mana, create a lander token, get a bit of life. Again, it's going to set up your deck to do the things it wants to be doing. It's a great enabler. We have Litho Breaking, 2 and a red, instant, create a lander token. Then you may sacrifice an artifact. When you do, this card deals 2 damage to each creature. So it's a board wipe, 2 damage, but you can refuse to sack the artifact, and then it's just 3 mana, create a lander token, which may be preferable in some circumstances, but arguably you'd probably rather use this as a board wipe more often than not. We have Seed Ship Impact. It's 1 and a green instant. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. If its mana value was 2 or less, create a lander token. So very efficient removal for artifacts and enchantment. And then if it's specifically something small, maybe something you didn't necessarily feel that good about removing, well, now there's upside, you're getting a lander token from it. And then we have Seed Ship Agrarian, 3 and a green. It's a creature insect scientist. It's a free body. Whenever this creature becomes tapped, create a lander token. And whenever a land you control enters, put a +1/+1 on this. So if you get this out early enough in a situation where your opponent can't block it, you can just swing every single turn and create lander tokens. And then when you crack them, it's just going to get bigger and bigger and harder for your opponent to block it. Alternatively, if you can't swing out, if you have a spacecraft and you're stationing it, that's a very easy and efficient way to tap this, get a lander token. Yes, it's a free for 4 mana, but it's also going to grow pretty big very quickly every time you play a land. So I think this is going to be pretty premium in this deck. Obviously, +1/+1 counters are stronger on smaller creatures than big creatures like this or middle-sized creatures, but it's still pretty decent. I seem to have left Seed Ship Impact in from the last one, so we'll just ignore that and move on. Edge Rover, it's a green artifact creature. It's a 2/2 body with reach. When this creature dies, create a lander token. So a bit slower, it needs to die before it creates the lander token, but 1 mana 2/2 is a good stat line. I think this card will feel pretty solid to have. It's also a reach, which is good for those like 1/1 flyer tokens that some decks will be generating. We also have Glacial Godmore. This is kind of a curve topper. You know, the whole point of getting all these lander tokens and lands down is to play big stuff. It's 5 green. 6/6 body, creature Leviathan with trample. When this creature enters, you create a lander token, and whenever a land you control enters, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain vigilance and haste until the end of turn. So this is going to really help you just swing really hard on your opponent. It's going to come in with haste, +1/+1, you're going to get vigilance. It's going to be in a fairly even board state. It's going to be very oppressive for your opponent to try and block these, but also swing back. This is the sort of card that this deck is really looking to top its curve with. And then last but not least, this card is insane. Terror Pact Intimidator is 1 and a red, 2/1. Whenever this creature enters, your target opponent gets to choose to either give you 2 lander tokens, which is insane for a 2-drop, or they give you 2 +1/+1 counters, which turns this into a 4/3. Now 4/3 is not the greatest stat line in the world, but for a 2-mana card, I don't think you can, like, that's crazy. That's the sort of body you'd expect on a 4-cost or 3-cost card. This is going to be really oppressive. The one downside is maybe your opponent has ways to deal with it, so they give you the tokens, or they have ways to deal with the 1/1, so they give you the counters. But I think this coming down on 2 will almost always be a very oppressive card, and even if it comes down late game, it's going to be pretty solid for a 2-drop. So in summary, you need to make sure you have a balance between landfall chaos and lander token generation. If you have too much of one and not enough of the other, you're not going to get a huge amount of synergy. On top of that, it's also worth noting, because lander tokens can get you any basic lands, you're going to have a really easy time splashing. So you're going to have a good opportunity to pick up rares and mythics and really solid premium cards from other colors and slap them into this deck. So you have cards like Biotech Specialist. It's a red and a green, a 1/3 creature insect scientist. It's a rare card, by the way, but when this creature enters, create a lander token. Whenever you sack an artifact, so use a lander token, you ping your opponent for 2. So consider this with the Seed Ship Agrarian, which every turn it's taps, you're getting a lander token. Then every time you're popping the lander token, it gets a +1/+1, but you're also doing 2 damage to your opponent. You're getting really oppressive really quickly. And then I just included the survey mech just to reiterate the fact that lander tokens make splashing easy. Getting lots of land down, generally speaking, means splashing is easier. This is a deck where I do think you want to consider what are your options other than the 2 colors that you're already playing. So in green-white, we have +1/+1 counters. Boost your entire army with +1/+1 counters, stack them up and watch the enemies fall. So the gold signpost uncommon here is Halia Ascendant Cadet. It's a 2 green, 2 white, 3/3 legendary creature human soldier. Whenever Halia enters or attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on a target creature you control. And then whenever one or more creatures you control that have counters on them deal combat damage to a player, you then draw a card. Super solid card. The costing's a little difficult for sure. 2 white and a green on a 5 cost. It's not horrible. You'll probably have 2 white more often than not, but it's a little awkward at times. Getting +1 counters every time you attack. I mean, as long as you can kind of defend the attack. I mean, a 3/3 on 5, you might not be able to push through. And then whenever you do get those 1/1 counters, and then you deal combat damage to the player, you're drawing a card, which is a huge payoff. I think this card will be more powerful staying back and not attacking more often than not, and then letting your 1/1 counter creatures actually draw you more card advantage. But all said and done, if you're playing this deck, this is obviously an inclusion. At 5 cost, you might not want too many of them, but you'll probably not see too many of them anyway. In terms of the payoffs for having +1/+1 counters in your battlefield, or on your creatures more accurately, we have Dock Worker Drone. It's a 1 and a white, 1/1 artifact creature robot. This creature enters with a +1/+1 counter on it already, and then when this creature dies, you get to move its counters to another target creature you control. This is going to be very solid and fundamental for this deck, because you're going to be gathering loads of counters, and then when you're losing them, you're going to be able to make sure you can put them onto other creatures. Big thing about this creature is you're going to want to make sure you have enough creatures on your board that you can actually make sure you have another target when this dies. You're probably going to want to try and control when this card dies so you can take advantage of that. And obviously you're going to be wanting to put counters on this creature so you can kind of get them back once it dies. Then we have Drix Fate Maker, 3 and a green, 3/2 creature Drix Wizard. When this creature enters, get a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Each creature you control gets a +1/+1 counter on it. Each creature that you control that has a +1/+1 on it has trample. So if most of your creatures have counters on them, they're going to have trample, and you can warp this in for 2. Its stats are pretty rough, but if you include the counter, it's a 4/3 for 4. So 4/3 for 4. And then your other cards having trample. I could see this being decent, but I could also see it being more towards a filler card or a playable card that you're not super excited about. But being able to warp it in, get the counters for 2, and then getting trample for a turn. Like, if you have a stale board and then you get trample all of a sudden, sometimes it can kind of win you the game, but I think it's more towards average than amazing. I think the Dock Worker Drone will probably be a more consistent include, also because you need more 2-drops in general than 4-drops. We have Starport Security for 1 white, 1/1 artifact creature robot soldier. Tap another target creature. This ability costs 2 less to activate if you control the creature with a +1/+1 counter on it. So, pretty common effect you'll see. Tap, pay 2 mana if you have +1/+1 counters on the board, and you can tap another target creature. Kind of lets you lock down a big threat from your opponent. This coming in as a 1 cost is pretty nice. Downside being you will need to counter on one of your creatures at least, or this will be way too expensive and not really worth it. This effect in general in the past has generally been more towards kind of average, not amazing. In this deck, I think it will continue being a little bit more on the average side. Then we have Broodguard Elite, X, green, 0/0. Creature Insect Knight, and then when this creature enters, you get X +1/+1 counters on it. So if you cast it for, let's say, 6, it's a 4/4. And then when this creature leaves the battlefield, put its counters on a target creature you control. And you can also warp it in for X and a green. So you're basically generating tons of counters to put onto one target creature. This seems very good, very flexible as well. Cards like these go up in value a lot, because you can cast them on 5, you can cast them on 3, you can cast them on 10. If you top deck this and you have 10 mana open, it can be insane. The fact that you can warp this as well means you can kind of you can do it twice if you top deck it, which is also insane. I think this is going to be super premium in this deck. It's flexible, high synergy. It's flexible, you can play it twice if you need to. You can play it once if you're desperate to keep it on the board. It's a little pricey, arguably. The warp version's not pricey. The unwarped version could be, but even then, I think it's a good rate. Playing it multiple times is amazing. High synergy for this deck. I think this will be a premium card in the deck. Next up, we have Dual Sun Technique, a 1 and a white instant spell. Target creature you control gains double strike until the end of turn. If it has a +1/+1 counter on it, draw a card. So you're replacing this card if you have a counter, which in general you should do in this deck. It should be fairly commonplace. I feel like there's a lot of cards that support that, so it shouldn't be too difficult. Double strike as a combat trick, in most scenarios, is just you kill whatever was blocking you, and then you just draw a card. This could get blown out, as with any combat trick. You run into the risk of they just remove your creature, this doesn't resolve, and then you don't draw your card, you don't get to win the fight, and you get 2 for 1 essentially. But if you play this cleverly, smartly, and you do it when your opponent has all their mana tapped, the payoff here is huge. I think this, because it's a combat trick and because of the nature of the game, it does tend towards more being average, but I think this is a card you'll play quite often. You'll be pretty happy with, even if you're just looking to draw a card and you don't even care about the combat trick necessarily. Like, that's the floor of this card, right? Not the ceiling. It's like, it'll still be solid worst case scenario a lot of the time. We have Maltstrider Uologist, 2 and a green, 3/3 creature insect soldier. Whenever a creature you control with a 1/1 counter on it dies, draw a card. I like that a lot. I like the stat line for the mana cost. Card draw's huge and limited, I think. Having so much card draw in all these uncommon and common cards, I'm starting to really like green-white. I think historically green-white counters has been weak in draft and limited formats in the past. And maybe Wizards are overcompensating here, making it like really good. But so far what I've seen is fantastic. And then we have Rayblade Trooper, 2 and a white, 2/2 creature human soldier. When this creature enters, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. Whenever a non-token creature you control with a 1/1 counter on it dies, create a 1/1 white human soldier. So being able to generate tokens to put your counters on whenever a creature dies, this creature enters, gives you counters to put on something that could die, and then you can also warp it in for 2 just to get the counters on. Or you could put it on itself and then it would die and then you'd create the token. Maybe. Not the craziest stat line, but like a cheap, reliable way to get counters. Counter synergy. It's both a payoff and an enabler. So right now we've been talking about the payoff stuff that benefit having +1/+1 counters. But a lot of these are also like, if we go back, you know, I think some of these are enablers as well, right? They're benefiting from having the counters, but then they're also stuff that can enable it as well. But we'll go through enablers also. So for enablers, these will just be cards that are just giving you +1/+1 counters. They don't necessarily give you a payoff, but they're cheap and efficient ways to get counters on the board. Put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. So this is Biosynthetic Burst, 1 and a green instant. It also gains Indestructible until the end of turn and untap it. It gains Rage and Trample as well. So a very strong combat trick that will allow you to kill flyers, to trample through your damage, untap a creature that's tapped so your opponent might not be expecting it, and you're getting a counter. As far as combat tricks, this is good. It's pretty premium. And it's giving you a counter. I think this deck wouldn't complain about having this. Then we have the Intrepid Tenderfoot, 1 and a green creature insect citizen. That's a 2/2. And then for 3 mana, you can activate only as a sorcery, put a 1/1 counter on a creature. So cost-wise, 3 mana to do something like this that you can do multiple times. It's nice as a mana sink, but it's super inefficient. Like if you have 6 mana and you put 2 1/1 counters down, that's not particularly strong. That's going to be weaker more often than not. I think this card will be like filler. I think you won't have the mana to really be happy about this. Sure, if you run out of cards and you can do this, but that's kind of a desperate situation to be in. You don't really want to be running out of cards and doing that. But, you know, worst case scenario, it does have upside. 2/2 for a 2 mana card. It's fine, I guess. But yeah, I think it's more towards filler. Other enablers we have is the Lux Knight Breacher, 3 and a white, 2/2 creature human knight. This creature enters with a +1/+1 counter on it for each creature and or artifact you control. So this one cares a bit more about artifacts and obviously having a wide board specifically on this one. But if you have, let's say, I don't know, 3 creatures, 2 artifacts, this comes down as a 7/7 for 4 mana. Doesn't have trample or vigilance or anything like that, so it's a body that could be chumped quite easily, but you're getting high synergy for the counters. I think if you have the capacity to go wide, this is going to be very nice in your white-green decks. Then we have Weftblade Enhancer, 5 and a white, 3/4 creature Drix Artificer. When this creature enters, put a 1/1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures, and then you can warp it in for 3 mana. It's expensive. It's got bad stats. They can give you counters. I think there's better ways to get counters, probably. I don't even think this is a crazy curve topper either. I'm not huge on this, but it's playable for sure. Atmospheric Greenhouse, 4 and a green, 5/4 artifact spacecraft. When the spacecraft enters, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. So, like I said in the past few cards, having a wide board's going to matter for something like this. Also, when you turn it into a flyer by putting 8 counters on it, it's going to be a decent 5/4 flyer with trample. So, I think this is going to be the sort of card you're looking for to end your curve, or like, you know, a more expensive card at least. Even if you only have 2 or 3 creatures on the board, this will be a pretty solid payoff. Dawnstrike Vanguard, 5 and a white creature human knight, 4/5, has lifelink. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 2 or more tapped creatures, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control other than this creature. Again, wide board. Specifically, these 2 cards have synergy because this can tap stuff, or you can tap stuff using the Atmospheric Greenhouse, that the Dawnstrike Vanguard then gives you 1/1 counters for tapping. Seems strong, a little expensive, 6 mana, 4/5 lifelink. I mean, if you're getting counters every turn, it's well worth the price. So I would say pretty solid, pretty good. You're going to want to be playing a card like Dawnstrike Vanguard. Then we have Honor, 1/1 counter and target creature, draw a card. It's a 1 white mana sorcery. I mean, it cycles itself, it's 1 mana. I think whenever you have a 1 mana card that does something and then cycles itself, I think they're often better than you think, simply because you're going to be able to be in a position of like, maybe you have 3 mana and you have a 2 cost you can drop, but you don't have a 3 cost. This card in your hand is always something that can kind of like allow you to curve out more efficiently, and then it replaces itself. So it's like you, even if you wanted another card, you'll get that other card in your hand the next turn, or like as soon as you play this. I think it's going to be really good. I think you're going to want this card in a lot of white decks. It's just kind of a curve smoother in a weird sort of way, if that makes sense. Scout for Survivors, 2 and a white sorcery. Return up to 3 target creature cards with total mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Put a +1/+1 counter on it. This is going to want you to have a lot of... If you had all 1-drops, they would all come back with counters, which would be pretty insane. And it really makes your board wide. I think there is a world in which you're not just 1/1 counters in this color pair, but you're just like pure aggro, super wide board. A surprising amount of 1-cost creatures, potentially. There are a lot of cards in the set. I say a lot, a few cards in the set that benefit from 1-cost creatures, like you can pull them out of your deck and draw them. And I think if you build around that, you could really have something special here. Cool, more enablers. We've got Siege Ship Agrarian, 3 and a green. Creature Insect Scientist, it's a 3/3. Whenever this creature becomes tapped, create a lander token. And then whenever land falls, so whenever land is played that you control, put a +1 counter on this creature. So this creature is going to be an efficient way to get lander tokens, and it's going to get you 1/1 counters. I feel like this card's going to be good in general. But yeah, if you're looking for more ways to get counters, this is really going to enable your deck. And lander tokens, I think, are pretty strong in general. Sunstar Lightsmith, 3 and a white, 3/3 creature human artificer. Whenever you cast a second spell each turn, put a 1/1 counter on this creature and draw a card. Might be difficult in this deck. Then again, if you have a lot of 1-drops, not too difficult. But 1/1 counters and drawing a card every turn is insane. Being able to cast 2 cards a turn, you'll need a lot of card draw and cheap cards to make work. But I could see it. I could see it be very good in this deck if you have the cards that support it. Okay, so in summary, you need an efficient way to generate 1/1 counters and payoffs to take advantage of them. You have things like Siege Ship Agrarian, that's going to get every time you play a land. You have Rayblade Trooper, that's going to get it whenever it enters. It's also going to, whenever a non-token creature you control with a 1/1 counter dies, create more creatures, cheap creatures that you can put counters on. And then obviously Drix Fate Maker, giving your countered creatures having trample, and then also being able to give more counters and more pin cheaply. So yeah, I think a wide board approach is the other takeaway for this color pair, is you're going to want to make sure not only are you getting those counters, but you have a wide board where you can put a lot of counters on a lot of creatures, and there are wide board synergies going on here. Now for white-black, we have a go wide synergy. Assemble the largest battlefield in the system and conquer your opponents with sheer numbers. Okay. Our gold signpost uncommon is Sir Vondum the Lucent, 2 and a white, black, black. 4/4 legendary creature, human knight, death touch, lifelink. Whenever Sir Vondum enters or attacks other creatures you control, get +1/+0 and gain death touch until the end of turn. 5 cost, 4/4, death touch, lifelink. Death touch, not too interesting on a big body. Lifelink is, it's good here. Being able to just swing after you place this card down, and like every creature you have is basically a kill on block, and then also gives you loads of lives, so the swing back probably won't kill you. Probably pretty good. It really depends on the cards that support this. How do you get a big board? Do you have a lot of stuff that's going to be tough to block? Lots of big creatures, little creatures as well, but like just a broad board state would be pretty good. I could see this being like a solid archetype. So let's look at the cards that give you a payoff for going wide. So we have the Lux Knight Breacher. It's a 3 and a white 2/2 human knight, but it gets 1/1 counters for every creature and artifact you control. If you have a wide board, this can come down as a 7/7, 9/9, really impactful, high power card. And then if you're swinging it was the gold signpost uncommon. It's going to have lifelink, it's going to heal you a ton, it's going to have death touch, so it's going to be hard to block. I think this would be a very solid 4-drop in this archetype. Then we have Zealous Display, 2 and a white instant. Creatures you control get +2/+0 until the end of turn. If it's not your turn, untap those creatures. So a tricky way to swing your board, not using this card, and then when your opponent swings back, you can play this to untap everything, and they get +2/+0. A pretty interesting combat trick in that regard, or just an aggressive way to finish off your opponent. Normally in most white decks, I'd probably say this is weak, but in this particular archetype, you'd want one of these at least, probably. We have Dawnstrike Vanguard, 5 and a white creature human knight, 4/5 lifelinker. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 2 or more tapped target creatures, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control, other than this creature. So yeah, if you have a wide board and you're swinging or you're stationing a space station, this is just going to make your board really oppressive. This is a pretty good blocker as well. It has lifelink, so it'll heal you up. It's a bit expensive, so there is the downside of that, but because it does happen on your end step, you can swing, have all your creatures tapped, and then place this down after the fact, and your opponent won't know to block specifically to stop this synergy going off. Next, we have Dual Sun Adepts, 2 and a white creature human soldier, 2/2 with double strike. Creatures you control get +1/+1 until the end of turn if you pay 5 mana. A double striker, if you've got lots of ways to buff it, starts to become quite difficult to manage. 2/2 body's not crazy. And then a 5 mana buff for your board. I think this card becomes significantly more powerful if you have reliable ways to make it bigger. It becomes a real problem for your opponent. If you don't have that, I think more often than not, it will just be a little awkward for your opponent. But I think this will be good to great, depending on how your deck is built. We have the Suzerain, Voidborn, 2 and a black, 2/2 creature vampire soldier. Whenever this creature or another creature or artifact you control dies, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So this is wide board, you're just swinging all the time, potentially losing lots of like tokens and creatures, but you're gaining life, dealing damage to your opponent. This is the sort of card that will really whittle down your opponent. Even if you're making just fair trades constantly, you'll be gaining an advantage. Downside for something like this is it is a 2/2 for free. It's not very defensive. It's going to die very easily. Yes, you can warp it in. I'm not sure the warp is huge for you. I would probably say this is good, but not great. But you'll play it in this deck for sure. Vote out 3 and a black, sorcery, destroy target creature, and you can convoke it out. So convoke just costs 1 less for every creature you tap to pay for it. I mean, that's a very solid That's a very solid creature in my opinion. Creature, sorry. This is going to be very efficient removal. You're always going to want in almost all your black decks, but it'll be particularly good here as well. As for the enablers for this deck, we have As for the enablers for this deck, so cards that actually help you go wide, not just pay you off for having already gone wide, we have Gravpack Monoist, 2 and a black, 2/1, creature human scout, flying. When this creature dies, create a 2/2 tapped colorless robot artifact creature token. So this is a creature that will replace itself, so as your board is dying off, this will keep your board large or wide for that matter. It's going to be a pretty important type of card you want if you want to stay wide on the board state. But 3 mana for a 2/1 and then a 2/2, it's fine. Not a huge fan of it, but we'll see. Night Luminary, 3 and a white, creature human knight, 3/2. When this creature enters, create a 1/1 white human soldier token. And you can warp it in for 2, so you'd get to keep the token, and then this body would disappear at the end of your turn. I'm not huge on this either, but I do see the fact that this is mostly to get your board going wide, getting creatures down, getting tokens down. But it itself in a vacuum is, I think, a little bit on the weaker side of things. So I'm not super impressed by this either. We have the Honored Knight Captain, 1 and a white, 1/1, creature human advisor knight. When this creature enters, create a 1/1 white human soldier token. So 2 1/1s for 2 mana, not bad. And then if you're willing to pay 6 mana, you can search your library for an equipment card, put it onto the battlefield and shuffle. You have to sack this creature as well. So 2 1/1 tokens that eventually allow you to draw a specific equipment card. And you put it straight into the battlefield for 6 mana. If you have a really good equipment card in your deck and you're really looking to fish it out, this will be amazing. And then I would also say just getting 2 1/1s in a deck that really wants to go wide. 2 mana is going to be good more often than not, so I think you'll probably be happy with this. We've got Scout for Survivors, 2 and a white, sorcery. You can return up to 3 target creatures with total mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, and then you put counters on each of them. I mean, this is going to be solid if you have a lot of cheap 2-cost, 1-cost creatures in your deck. That's going to be the big decider if you have enough 1-cost to justify a card like this. Getting to put them down, getting your board very wide. I mean, this is a card that really depends on what you have in your deck, but if you have the right pieces, it will be very powerful. We have Starfield Shepherd, 3 and a white, flying 3/2, creature angel. When this creature enters, search your library for a basic plains card or a creature card with mana value 1 or less. So kind of repeating the theme I just mentioned, you're probably going to want 1-cost creatures, not only to go wide, like in green-white, but also because there's synergistic cards that give you payoffs if you have 1-cost mana value 1 or less cards in your deck. You can also warp this so you get its enters effect twice. A 3/2 flyer for 5's obviously a little over expensive. You're paying a premium for it. But the fact that this will kind of allow you to draw 2 cards, and you get a 3/2 flyer for 5, and you can warp it in so you get void synergies if you need to, stuff like that. I think this is going to be a good card, pretty solid. You're not going to want too many copies of it because you're going to run out of 1-value creatures very quickly. But you can always pick a plains instead. But once you're at 5 mana, is a plains going to be a huge impact? Probably not. Next up, we have Time Color, 2 black mana. It's a 2/2 creature Drix Warlock. Has haste, and you may cast it from the graveyard using its warp ability, which costs a black and 2 life. This is a creature that's going to just keep coming back and back and back. Every time it dies, you can warp it in, and then when it dies from being warped in, you can then play it as an exiled card, but then when it dies the next time, it goes into the graveyard. So this is all about recursion, having stuff that dies. It's going to be really hard for your opponent to get rid of this forever. It needs to be exiled by some sort of removal. And it has haste, and it's a 2/2 for 2. Yes, it's 2 black mana, and you're paying life every time you bring it back. If you have the lifelink to support this, or the life gain so that the cost isn't too painful for you. I feel like a card like this can really overwhelm an opponent just because you can always keep bringing it back. I think this will be a premium card in almost all the black decks, but in a deck where you want to go wide and you want to keep having more creatures added to the board, this guy's going to keep coming back for you and going to be a really strong enabler. So in summary, you want to go wide, play a lot of creatures, and then get the payoff advantages for them. So something like the Honored Knight Captain, you're going to get 2/1/1s for 2 mana. Scout for Survivors, you're going to be able to return the Honored Knight Captain, put him down, give him a counter. He also creates a 1/1, and you're going to be able to bring back another 1-cost creature. So you're going to have like 3, 4, 5 things on the board, and then Servondum is going to come down, and then all those small creatures can swing, and they have lifelink, so they're gaining you life, and they have Death Touch, so your opponent will struggle to block them in most cases. All said and done, I think black-white, you're going to want to make sure you have the payoffs and enablers and good quality cards to make this work. But I think if you get all the cards you're looking for, there's definitely support for this archetype in the color pair. So in red, blue, we have Artifact Aggro. Play cheap artifacts you've uncovered on your travels to quickly overpower the field with supreme synergies. Okay. We have Mnemonom. Uthros Exile, 1 and a blue and a red, 1/3 legendary creature Jellyfish Advisor. This has flying. Whenever an artifact you control enters, put a 1/1 counter on the target creature. Okay, a 1/3 flyer for free is fine-ish, but the fact that every time you get an artifact down, you're getting a +1/+1 counter on any creature, so including this will become a pretty brutal flyer very quickly. Getting artifacts won't be too difficult. And this is like a perfect, gold signpost on common. It's telling you exactly what you want to do. Is you want to get artifacts down. You're going to want to aggressively push your opponent's face because this is an aggro archetype, and obviously there will be payoffs for those artifacts going down. So let's look at some of the payoffs that are going to help you when you play artifacts. So we have Cloud Sculpt Technician, 2 and a blue, creature Jellyfish Artificer, 1/4 flyer. As long as you control an artifact, this becomes a 2/4. 2/4 for free with flying is good, not great. It does need an artifact to become a 2/4 instead of a 1/4. This is good, not great. This is like playable. You'd include it, you'd be happy with it, but it's not like crazy premium. Or play Pangolian, 1 and a red, 2/2 artifact creature robot Pangolian. Whenever another artifact you control enters, if you pay 1 mana, you may pay 1 mana, and if you do, put a 1/1 counter on this creature. Okay, so this is as long as you're getting artifacts down, this is going to be a very powerful, strong creature that your opponent has to deal with. This sort of card's super premium, I think. As long as you're getting artifacts, which is the whole point of this archetype, you're going to need to make sure you have an extra mana, which does lower this card a little bit in my estimation, because being able to pay 1 mana every turn can be tough. If you can afford it, this very quickly gets out of hand. It's very much like a Zazu's Chocobo or Sahagin from Final Fantasy. It's a small creature that your opponent probably will have to use premium removal to deal with. Next, we have the Selfcraft Mechan, 3 and a blue, artifact creature robot artificer, 3/4 body. When this creature enters, you may sacrifice an artifact. When you do, put a 1/1 counter on a target creature and draw a card. Having to sack an artifact's not amazing, but you're going to have lander tokens, you're going to have 1/1 artifact creatures. The fact that it gives you a counter and draws you a card is almost always going to be worth it. 4 mana for a 3/4 body isn't amazing, but yeah, I think if you have space for 4-drops, this is going to be the sort of 4-drop you're definitely going to be looking for in this archetype. Also, it's worth noting that this creature itself is an artifact, and if I go back up, the Pangolian also is an artifact. So a lot of these cards are payoffs, but they're also their own enablers, so they're benefiting each other. Next up, we have the Mechan Assembler, 4 and a blue, 4/4 artifact creature robot artificer. Whenever another artifact controls you control enters, create a 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token, and can only trigger once a turn. This is a perfect example of a card. If you play the Mechan Assembler, then you play the Selfcraft Mechan. That's going to generate you a 2/2 token that theoretically you could destroy to get a card draw and a 1/1 counter. So you're only losing 1/1 worth of stats, but you're getting a whole card drawn. And you can do this pretty much like every turn you drop an artifact down. So you're going to be getting card draw, board presence, depending on what you need or want. So very strong card, a 5-mana 4/4. Not the craziest body, but the fact that it's constantly going to be generating you tokens probably, definitely makes up for that. Next, we have the Steel Swarm Operator. It's 1 and a blue, 1/1 artifact creature robot soldier, has flying, and you can tap it to spend one or to add 1 mana, and you can only spend that to cast artifacts, or you can tap it and then spend, it generates 2 mana, and you can spend that mana to activate abilities of artifact sources. Something that you can tap for artifact spells. It's a 1/1 flyer for 2. These cards are always good. They're like pseudo ramp, or they essentially do ramp out a bunch of stuff for you. You're going to have a lot of artifacts, so it's not going to be hard to spend this mana. And then worst case, it's a 1/1 flyer, which isn't horrible. It's an artifact itself, which is a huge payoff already, and an enabler. So yeah, I think Steel Swarm Operator, you're going to want 1 or 2 of these just to really ramp out your big, powerful artifacts. Virulent Silencer has come up again. It's a 3-mana 2/3 artifact robot assassin. Whenever a non-token artifact creature you control deals combat damage, you get 2 poison counters on your opponent. Again, if you have a ton of artifacts like this 1/1 flyer, and you swing in 5 times and your opponent doesn't have a way to kill a 1/1 flyer, you've won the game. So it's a bit of a build around, but honestly, it might just be a creature that just out of nowhere is winning you games. If you have evasive artifacts on your side, it becomes really oppressive really quickly. So it is a build around card, but it's very strong, and it's going to be a payoff and an enabler all in one for this archetype. And then last we have the Weft Stalker Ardent, 2 and a red, 2/3 creature Drix Artificer. Whenever another creature or artifact you control enters, ping your opponent for 1 damage, and you can warp this in for 1. So having this on the back line, not really swinging with it, you're just going to slowly ping down your opponent. I think this would trigger, deals combat damage. This isn't combat damage, so it wouldn't trigger Virulent Silencer. But still, nevertheless, you're pinging your opponent. You're going to be able to generate a bunch of artifacts, I imagine. This could easily do 5-6 damage over the course of a game, so it's going to be something your opponent's going to have to deal with eventually. Enablers, we have cards that are artifacts that are going to synergize nicely with an aggro deck, that are going to basically enable all your artifact payoffs. Cryogen Relic is a 1 and a blue artifact. When this card enters, you draw a card. Whenever you sack it, you can put a stun count on a target tapped creature, but then you also draw a card whenever you sack this. Not the most aggro, so this archetype might not love this card, but I think this card's going to be strong almost anywhere you're looking for a blue card or an artifact. It's essentially draw 2 cards, stun a creature at some point, and it's going to cost you between 2 and 4 mana to get that stuff done. There are other cards that can sack this, so if you're not worried about the stun counter, you can get the 2 cards out of this without actually having to pay the extra mana also. We have the Ilvoy Lightjammer, 1 and a blue artifact equipment. This can be flashed out. When this equipment enters, attach it to a creature you control. That creature gains hexproof. And then equipped creature gets +1/+2, and it's equipped for 3 mana. This is just going to be a cheap artifact that's going to save your creature from dying from like a removal. And then it's going to be an artifact that hangs around that gives you +1/+2, which is not horrible. It's pretty solid. The equip cost is a bit steep, but this is going to be a great sack target as well in the future for you. If you say the creature using it dies, you can't really afford to efficiently re-equip another creature. Just sack this to something that wants to sack it, and then you're going to get some payoff from it also. We have the Caveron Turbo Drone, 2 and a red, 2/3 artifact creature robot scout. Target creature you control gets +1/+1 and gains haste until the end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. It's an artifact, which is decent. Tap to get +1 and gain haste. I guess if you play something big, you can haste it out and do some damage. It's a 2/3 free mana. I think this is going to be weak, honestly. This is more filler than anything. Here's an artifact. Yes, you can haste big stuff out, but I think you're going to want to avoid this more often than not. But it's just a showcase also that there will be artifacts in the colors that you want. And this is an aggro deck, so haste has more value. But I do think sometimes cards like this will be a bit of a trap. They won't necessarily be the premium cards you might assume they are. Next, we have the Melded Moxite. It's 1 and a red artifact. When this artifact enters, you may discard a card. If you do, draw 2 cards. So 2 mana to draw 2 cards and discard a card. Technically, you're not up any cards because this itself is a card, so you're getting 2 for 2. But then eventually you can sack this artifact to create a 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token. So the upside of a card like this, yes, you're discarding 2, gaining 2, which is not a huge upside. But this enters, it's an artifact, you sack it, you're getting sack synergies, and then you're also getting another artifact potentially. So I think this is the kind of perfect like card smoothing, card fixing effect you're going to want for this specific archetype. In other archetypes that don't care about artifacts, I could see this card being very mediocre, but here I think it's going to be a good pickup for you. Other enablers we have are the Nanoform Sentinel, 2 and a blue, 3/2 artifact creature robot. Whenever this creature becomes tapped, untap another target permanent. This ability triggers only once each turn. So an okay 3/2 for free artifact creature, so you're getting the artifact down. The body's not amazing, but this is going to be a really powerful stationing card. You can tap stuff to untap it. You can tap this to untap something else, to station something 3 times. That's going to be huge. And also when you attack with this and another creature, you can untap one of the other creatures, which is okay, I guess. It's like a pseudo vigilance. I think this card really goes up in value if you've got space stations and you're looking to station stuff efficiently and quickly. Next, we have the Red Tiger Mechan. It's 3 and a red, 3/3 artifact creature robot cat. It has haste and you can warp it out. In terms of an aggro deck, a 2 mana 3/3 haste isn't horrible. 4 mana 3/3 haste that sticks around. The aggro aspect of this is a bit, I'm not sure. A lot of these cards don't feel like they're good enough to win you an aggro like race. It feels like it's going to be low impact. I think you're going to rely a bit more on the artifact synergies than just being pure aggro to make this deck work, in my opinion. We have the Zookeeper Mechan, 1 and a red, 1/3 artifact creature robot. You can tap this for 1 red mana, which is, it's like a Gobu Gardener from Final Fantasy. And then it's also artifact synergy, which is exactly what you're looking for in this deck. And then if you pay 7 mana, target creature you control gains +4/+0 till the end of turn. I think that 7 mana effect is going to be more often than not very mediocre. There are going to be situations that wins you the game. And whenever a 2 mana card that can ramp you, can block for you, can eventually win you the game, that ends up being premium, even though it's going to be very like maybe 10% of games, maybe 5% of games or less, it's going to be relevant. I think whenever a 2 mana card can do something like that, it's going to be good impact. And this is going to be a pretty great card in the set, or the archetype, sorry. Yeah, I think you're going to want to pick it quite highly, especially if you're looking for 2 drops and a bit of ramp. We have the Atomic Microsizer for 1 blue. It's an artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+0. When the equipped creature attacks, choose up to 1 target creature. That creature can't be blocked this turn and has base power, toughness 1/1 until the end of turn. Weird wording. Let me try and parse this. So you can choose a target creature. That creature can't be blocked this turn, and then has base power 1/1. So if you choose your creature, it's just going to be a 1/1, but it can't be blocked. You could choose an opponent's creature to make it a 1/1, and then it's not an issue for you, but your creature can still be blocked. And then you have to pay 1 to get this down, 2 to equip it. This is a weird card. I could see a world in which this is an amazing card. I could see a world in which it's bad. I'm struggling to like analyze where I think this will end up. I think this is something you have to play with, see how it works. Obviously, it's an artifact, you're getting the payoff for that. Whether or not as a piece of equipment this is going to win you games, I could see it for sure, but I could also see it just being a little slow and annoying. I think you're just going to have to see how this card turns out, but I think it's one worth looking at. Next, we have the Caveron Harrier. It's red, 2/1, artifact creature, robot soldier. Whenever this creature attacks, you may pay 2. If you do, create a 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token that's tapped and attacking. And then you sack the token at the end of the combat. If you're looking for ways of reliably getting artifacts every single turn, this is huge. Obviously, when you swing with this and pay 2 mana, this is probably dying because it's a 2/1. But this is almost like an artifact that's going to guarantee you 2 artifact drops, which if you have the payoffs on the board for is going to be huge. If you drop it on turn 1, for example, and your opponent doesn't have anything, it can swing in a few times and do a bit of damage. You are having to pay 2, so it's not going to be that strong. Yeah, I could see this being pretty good in the deck. You probably only want one of these. You probably don't want tons of these in your deck, but it's an aggro deck. You're going to want to push in damage. You're going to want to hit 1-drops, and you want to get as many artifacts down as you can on your board state. Next, we have the Mecha Navigator. It's 1 and a blue, artifact creature, robot pilot, 2/1. Whenever this creature becomes tapped, draw a card, then discard a card. If you have space stations and you can tap this without swinging, because this dies in battle most of the time, but if you can just tap this constantly and get the card sorting, the looting rummage effect, this is going to be pretty solid, I think. I think this is more spacecraft synergy than like, oh, I want to swing. But if you're on the play, you might be able to get a swing with this without your opponent being able to block it. It's also an artifact, obviously. That's why it's here as an enabler. So, yeah, I think this is going to be pretty good. Now, obviously, I covered the uncommon, common, red-blue artifacts. There's loads of artifacts in the set. Obviously, uncolored ones, rares, mythics, etc. So those were the ones that you're going to see as a bulk in this set. But the bulk of them you're going to see in this set quite often. But obviously, bear in mind there will be other artifacts that definitely want to be in this archetype. Also, another part of the archetype that, as wizards describe it, is this will be aggro. So I thought I'd cover some of the really premium, really powerful aggro cards in uncommon and common that you might want to look out for. We have Plasma Bolt. It's a red sorcery. Plasma Bolt deals 2 to any target, but if you've got a void trigger this turn, it deals 3. It's essentially a sorcery speed shock that can do 3 damage most of the time. I think this is going to be pretty premium removal. Yes, it can only hit small things, but it's also going to give you a little bit of reach. And I think, you know, if this is a true aggro deck, you know, having a couple of these, being able to pop your opponent for 6 damage when they don't expect it, will just win you the game out of nowhere a lot of the time. Next, we have the Sculpting Blast. It's 1 and a blue. It's an instant. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, and if it was attacking, you get to create a 1/1 colorless drone artifact creature token with flying that can only block flyers. A fairly efficient way to return your opponent's stuff to their hand. It's going to be very good tempo for you. You're going to be able to push in a lot of damage, hopefully. If it's something that's attacking you, you're going to be able to get more upside from it. It's an artifact that you're getting as well, so artifact synergies matter in this archetype. I think this is going to be one of the better, you know, bounce spells you're going to see in Limited in general, so I think this is a card to look out for if you're playing blue almost always. Ooh, we have the Frontline War Rages, 2 and a red, 2/3 creature Kavu soldier. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 2 or more tapped creatures, put a 1/1 counter on this creature. If you're swinging every turn, this is just going to get bigger, 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 and bigger, and that's going to be a huge problem for your opponent. Theoretically, if you have a space station, this can also work. It is a 2/3 for free. This does seem to be a theme of this format, where the free drops are quite low stats and the 2-drops are quite high from what I've seen. So I think you might have a hard time swinging with this. If you're on the play, I could see this being very good. It's a little conditional in my opinion. I think if it gets blocked, it just loses out on the upside because it has to get to your end step before you get the counters. I think this will be more towards filler than good, but I think it is the sort of card you might want to play in this deck. Next, we have UnofficialJoe, 4 blue, 5/5. When this creature enters, tap target artifact or creature an opponent controls and put a stun counter on it. It's worth mentioning that this is an artifact creature and you can warp it in for free. So you can warp in for free, stun something, and then for 6 mana you can stun something again. If you can haste this as well with the warp, you're getting a 5/5 swing. Again, this is just trying to lock your opponent down so you can swing on them and get that aggro advantage and and get them to a point where they're low HP, low life total, and you can just use for example, you could use a plasma bolt and finish them off. Next up, we have the Memorial Team Leader. It's 3 and a red for free creature Kavu Soldier. During your turn, other creatures control get +1/+0, and then you can warp this in for 2. If you have a wide board, this is going to be pretty good. Yeah, a 4/3 for 4 mana that's making everything a little bit stronger. I think it's mostly going to come down to how wide your board is, this card. But if it is wide, this is going to be very powerful. If you have like lots of 1/1 flyer tokens, for example, this will be nightmarish for your opponent. The next card is insane. You probably will just play it in every single red deck you have. The Terrapact Intimidator is 1 and a red creature Kavu Scout. It's a 2/1 that when you play it, your opponent gets to decide to either give you 2 lander tokens, which is insane value for you, or give this 2 +1 +1/+1 counters, which would turn this into a 4/3 2 mana creature, which seems like the option most people are going to be able to be taking because the lander tokens will be so strong. But a 2 mana 4/3 is going to be so oppressive for your opponent. But giving your opponent 2 lander tokens is also oppressive as hell. The one downside is your opponent gets to pick, so your opponent knows what they're more scared of and what they're more worried about. But even so, this card is going to dominate games. I think it's probably going to be one of the strongest red uncommons. If not, it is the strongest red uncommon in the format. And to summarize this archetype, you're going to want to play artifacts, you're going to want to use the payoffs to gain an advantage from that, and then you just want to go face. So obviously the All-Plate Pangolian, whenever artifacts enter, you're getting counters. If you play something like the Terrapact Intimidate and they give you 2 lander tokens, that's 2 counters you're going to be able to get. And then if you sack, for example, a lander, you can use Plasma Bolt and hit anything for 3 damage. So, just tons of opportunities to get damage on your opponent, tons of opportunities to get 1/1 counters, tons of opportunities to get artifacts down and get lots of payoffs. I think this archetype is going to be really fun, and I think it's going to be really strong. Next up, we have the black-green graveyard synergies, and for the gold signpost uncommon, we have Siegeship Broodtender. It's a black and a green 2/3 creature insect citizen. When this creature enters, you mill 3 cards into your graveyard, and then for 3 and a black and a green, you can sack this creature to return any target creature or spacecraft card from your graveyard to the battlefield as a sorcery speed effect. Being able to mill in a graveyard synergy deck is super important, especially at 2 costs. It's going to be a very efficient way to put stuff into your graveyard. And then a 5 cost reanimate effect. You do have to sack this creature, which is a bit of a downside, but I don't know, 5 cost reanimate effects are normally very strong. You're going to be able to pull out your strongest creatures that died and bring them back to the board. I think this is going to be a super premium card if you can get graveyard synergies to work. So the payoffs for black-green, we have Pull Through the Weft. It's 3 and 2 green pips, sorcery, and you can return up to 2 target non-land permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand, and then return up to 2 target land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. This is kind of slow. It is giving you 2 land into the board state, but then pulling cards into your hand can be a bit awkward because you're paying 5 mana and you're basically doing nothing. and then you have to wait all the way to your next turn probably to actually play those cards. Seems slow but powerful. It's probably a little too slow though, honestly. And then we have Scrounge for Eternity, 2 and a black. As an additional cost to the spell, sack an artifact or creature, return target creature or spacecraft card with mana value 5 or less from the graveyard to the battlefield, then create a lander token. Now this one seems good, right? You're getting, for 3 mana, you're getting a 5 cost onto the board more often than not. And even if it's a 4 cost, it's still efficient. Yes, you do have to sack something like a lander token, but you also get a lander token back in return. I think as far as graveyard synergies go, this is going to be a very premium card. It's the sort of thing you want from a graveyard card, honestly. It is sorcery speed, but I don't think that's a problem. And you do need something to sack, but if you can kind of meet that criteria, I think you're going, and obviously you need ways to mill stuff or surveil stuff into the graveyard, then this card's going to be very good. Other payoffs, we have Timeline Color. It's black, haste creature. It's a 2/2 Drix Warlock. You may cast this card from the graveyard. So if you ever mill or surveil this into the graveyard, you can always cast it again. This card kind of reoccurs as much as you want when it dies. So it's a fairly strong card, and it does have that upside. If you mill it, it kind of theoretically is another card in your hand in a weird sense. So I think this is a huge payoff for just general graveyard synergies in general. For our enablers, we have Comet Crawler, 2 and a black. It's a lifelink creature, 2/3. Whenever this creature attacks, you may sack another creature or artifact. If you do, this creature gets +2/+0 to the end of the turn. So it's a way to sack your creatures that are already on the board, get a bonus, they go into the graveyard, and then potentially you can reanimate them, or you can, for example, if it's something like the Timeline Color, you can just play it again. I wouldn't say this is an insanely strong card. I would say it's pretty average, but it's the sort of thing that maybe starts to make sense in a graveyard synergy deck. We also have the Felgrav ship for 2 and a black, artifact spacecraft. It's a 3/2 flyer with lifelink if you get 8 counters on it. And when the spacecraft enters, you mill 3 cards, then return a creature or spacecraft card from your graveyard to your hand. Milling cards, pulling a card back, that's normally pretty good. And then the fact that this eventually becomes a flyer with lifelink, I think that can be a pretty good graveyard interaction, I guess. I mean, we have seen in the past getting a bit more, like getting like 2 creatures back from the graveyard, but I guess this can also get spacecraft. I think this is going to be towards more average than amazing. Other enablers we have are Hymn of the Fallen, 1 and a black sorcery. You can surveil 1 and then you draw a card and lose 1 life. And if you've got Void triggered, you get to draw 2 cards. The surveil's really what made me want to put this here as an enabler. Obviously, if you're surveilling cards into the graveyard, that's good for you. But this is just a good card in general. It's draw 2 more often than not. And you lose 1 life, which is not a big issue, I don't think. I think this is just a premium card draw card for black, and you're going to want it in almost all your decks. But it does have surveil, so it's a bit of an upside in this deck specifically. We also have the Umbral Color Zealot, 1 and a black creature human cleric. It's a 3/2, and you can sack other creatures or artifacts to surveil 1. Not amazing, but a 3/2 for 2 mana is okay. I could see a world where maybe I'd want to play this, but again, it's more towards average. And what you've probably noticed, and what I'm going to summarize here, is that actually I don't think green-black as a graveyard synergy is supported, especially not at common and uncommon. Maybe there's some rares and mythics that if you can get them, you can make this deck a really good graveyard deck. For me personally, I feel like it's lacking, and you're going to see mostly uncommon and common cards when you're drafting. I think this archetype is just not there. And maybe it's a case where green-black is just good cards. The graveyard synergy is the name like Wizards decided to give to this color pair, but it's not actually what it's trying to do that often. And really the focus should just be on green-black, high-quality cards. We're going to have to see the format come out, see how it plays out. But if you have to play graveyard synergy, and if you're getting most of your value from graveyard interaction in this color pair, the cards aren't there to support that, and then this color pair will just be weak. If you're just playing cards that are good green-black cards, and there's just enough good green-black cards at uncommon and common, maybe this color pair works, but I'd probably advise against this color pair. It's with no experience of the format, right? But obviously, once you start playing a format, you get a much clearer idea of what's happening, and maybe there's a chance that this color pair could be decent. For red white, we have space stations. Space stations or spacecraft are a new type of card where, kind of like vehicles, you crew them, but instead you station them. And instead of crewing them once a turn, what you do is you put counters on based on how much you station them for, so the power of the creature that stations them. And then once you reach a certain threshold, the space station will get a new effect. Spacecraft, sorry, will get a new effect, or it'll get some kind of turning into a creature payoff. For the gold signpost uncommon, we have Sammy, Ship's Engineer, 2 red and a white. So 2/4 legendary creature human artificer. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 2 or more tapped creatures, create a tapped 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token. So obviously, if you have a ton of space stations, you're tapping your creatures to station them. You're then getting payoffs for having tapped creatures. I think this is going to be one of those archetypes where if space stations are too slow, if it's too hard to station, you're tapping all your creatures, you're becoming too vulnerable, and the payoff isn't there. I could definitely see it being really difficult to put together. And you probably don't want tons of spacecraft in your deck because it's going to be hard to support all of them. But then if you have enough cards that pay off for having tapped creatures, maybe you can make it work. In terms of payoffs that we have, these are cards that benefit from you having spacecraft in your deck. So I've put Chrome Companion. He's 2 mana, 2/1 artifact dog creature. When this creature becomes tapped, you gain 1 life. So every time you tap this guy to station a spacecraft, you're getting 1 life, which is going to kind of counteract the fact that you're going to have 1 less blocker available on your opponent's turn. He also has a mana ability, 2 mana and a tap, and then you can put a target card from a graveyard onto the bottom of the owner's library. That's probably never going to be relevant in draft. It might be occasionally, super rare scenarios. But I mean, that's the sort of text you can almost ignore. I guess if you're playing against someone doing green-black, they have graveyard matters stuff. Maybe you can take some of their best creatures, put it on the bottom of the library. That's where you're going to see the best payoff for a card like this, or for that effect specifically. Then we have Drill 2 Deep. It's 1 and a red instant, and you can choose one of these effects. Put 5 charge counters on a target spacecraft or planet you control, or you can destroy a target artifact. 2 mana, instant speed, destroy target artifact is decent removal. You're not angry about that at all. And then being able to supercharge your spacecraft quickly, get them online when you're not really meant to be getting them online super early. I could see that being very strong, especially in this color pair. Next, we have Flight Deck Coordinator. It's 2 and a white, 3/3 creature human soldier. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 2 or more tapped creatures, you gain 2 life. So similar to the Chrome Companion, if you're tapping your creatures down, gaining life, it kind of counterbalances the risk of tapping all your creatures down if you can gain life also. But if you're not even stationing something, you could just swing with this and gain life also, which is, you know, it's almost like it has lifelink. I think this is going to be a pretty decent 3/3. Then we have a spell like Focus Fire. It's 1 white mana. It's an instant speed spell, and Focus Fire deals X damage to target attacking or blocking creature, where X is 2+ the number of creatures or spacecraft you control. These types of removal are normally pretty good, and it's getting X+2 or 2+X. So worst case scenario, it's 2. You have a couple of creatures on the board, it's 4. A bunch of creatures, you can go very high. I think this is a piece of removal in your white decks that you're almost always going to be picking up. I would almost say it's premium, simply because white doesn't necessarily have the best removal. Instant speed thing that can tackle most stuff that's going to be relevant on the board. I think this is just going to be solid. And obviously, if you have a lot of spacecraft, as this deck will want, you're getting even more upside in that regard. Or another way to think of it is, it doesn't matter if you have lots of creatures or lots of spacecraft, both of them are going to make this card good. We also have the Frontline War Rager. It's 2 and a red creature Cavu soldier. It's a 2/3. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 2 or more tapped creatures, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So if you're stationing every turn, say you have Chrome Companion, the other card I mentioned earlier, you're gaining life, you're gaining +1 counters. Sure, you're not attacking your opponent, sure, you're not gaining advantage, but you're not getting your opponent's life total down, and maybe they're attacking into you, but you're definitely slowly building up a solid advantage in board state, gaining a bit of life, getting your stations online. Next, we have Starfighter Pilot. It's 1 and a white, 2/2 human pilot. Whenever this creature becomes tapped, you get to surveil 1. This effect's always pretty good. We saw it in the last set, Final Fantasy, on a flyer, so you were always able to go through, and you were always able to surveil because it was very hard for someone to find a flyer to block it. I say very hard, but you know, a 2-drop that has flying often gets to punch in a couple of times. The flip side to this is you can station stuff to get this tapped, and in that scenario, I guess this is almost on par or maybe even better. I think this effect's going to be extremely strong. Being able to surveil early game means you're not going to flood out, you're not going to screw. I think these cards, you look at first glance and might think, oh, it's just a 2/2 that surveils sometimes. But no, this is going to save your game like a lot. It's going to be like a B+. It's going to be a really premium card, especially in this archetype. Next, we have Dawnstrike Vanguard. It's a 5 and a white. It's a 4/5 lifelink creature human knight. And at the beginning of your end step, if you control 2 or more tapped target creatures, just tapped creatures, sorry, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control other than this creature. I think it's worth adding, because this has lifelink, I think this is an archetype or color pair where your opponent's going to swing on you easily as you're stationing up. And so being able to heal back your life total is going to be important. I do think stat-wise this is a little rough. 6 mana for a 4/5 isn't amazing. But in a world where you're getting counters and you're healing up potentially, I think this card could be pretty solid, pretty good. Next, we have the Pulsar Squadron Ace, 1 and a white, 1/2 human pilot creature. When this creature enters, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may search and reveal a spacecraft card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest at the bottom of your library in a random order. If you didn't put a card into your hand this way, put a 1/1 counter on this creature. So it's a 2/3 if you miss, and best case scenario is drawing you a card. I mean, you're going to need quite a few spacecraft, like 3, 4, 5 before this hits super often. But a 2 mana, 2/3 is fine. Also, the counter synergies exist in this set, so I think this is playable. It's not a horrible card at all. And you're going to need a lot of two drops anyway in the draft format. Yeah, I think you're going to play this card fairly happily in this color pair. And last but not least, we have the Vault Guard Trooper, 4 and a red, 5/5 creature cavu soldier. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 2 or more tapped target creatures, you may discard a card from your hand, and then if you do, draw 2 cards. I mean, it's a really good effect. It's coming down at 5 mana. I mean, yeah, you're going to need stations to kind of effectively constantly tap your stuff. You're not always going to be able to swing on your opponent. But again, yeah, if you have the stations, if you have the cards to support this, being able to draw every every turn and discarding your worst card in hand, I mean, that's the sort of effect that will win you a game eventually, as long as you can kind of get it to pop off a couple of times. So yeah, I think this is a very good payoff. I would just say, as I've been saying with all these cards, if you're tapping all your creatures, you're at risk of your opponent just swinging and killing you very quickly, though. And we also need to talk about the spacecraft that are available. So I just picked some uncommon and common ones that will be in this color, in these colors that you might want to look out for. So Pinnacle Kill Ship is 7 mana, so it's very expensive. It deals 10 damage up to 1 target creature. I would say 99% of the time, this is just kill a creature, right? For 7 mana. 7 mana to kill a creature is generally considered very bad as far as efficiency goes. But eventually you can station this for 7+ counters, and it's a flying 7/7, which is a pretty solid creature. You could almost split this in half and say, like, oh, it's 3.5 mana to kill something, and then 3.5 mana is giving you a 7/7 flyer. You do have to work for the flyer, don't get me wrong, but when you kind of look at it through that context, I think you can kind of see how a card like this might have quite good impact. And if you think you've got a board state that's kind of stale and neither you or your opponent can attack, this is the sort of card where you just station up with a few of your creatures and now you have a 7/7 flyer that your opponent's going to really struggle to deal with. Next, we have Wormwall Sweeper. It's 2 mana, 2/2 artifact spacecraft. When it enters, you can surveil 2, and then you station it for 4+ counters. Surveilling 2 is a decent effect, especially early on in the game. You're going to really smooth out your hand and your draws. And then I think stationing for 4 won't be impossible. So a 2/2 flyer is not a horrible upside. Again, stations are just slow. That's their biggest problem. They're a very negative tempo play, but they could be very powerful if you have efficient ways of getting them online. And next, we have the Debris Field Crusher. It's 4 and a red. It's a 1/5 artifact spacecraft. And when this enters, it deals 3 to any target. 3 damage, that is. And then when you station it for 8, it's 1 and a red. This spacecraft gets +2/+0 until the end of turn. I mean, it will become a decent creature. It is 5 mana for 3 damage to begin with. So again, as with all spacecrafts, very slow, low impact, very expensive. But again, once you start getting all these spacecraft online, it's almost like, you're getting 3 creatures or like, this is like a card and a half almost. And so you're kind of getting a card and a half worth of value by tapping down your creatures. So it's very negative tempo, very positive in card value. I think that's how you just have to look at the archetype. Next, we have the Galvanizing Sourship, 5 and a red, 6/5 artifact spacecraft. And then you can station it for 3+, and it has flying and haste. So this is a spacecraft where you're really only concerned about the body, the creature you're getting. 3 counters is not hard to find. If you have a 3/3 on board, you could play this, tap the 3/3, and now you have a 6/5 flyer with haste for 6 mana. Not the crazy. Actually, 6 mana, 6/5 flyer with haste is good. I actually think this is going to be a really nice card. This is kind of the opposite of a lot of the other spacecraft, where you're not going to have that downside of being super slow. It's actually quite a high impact card as soon as you play it, more often than not. Okay, next up we have the Rescue Skiff. It's 5 and a white. It's an artifact spacecraft. When it enters, return target creature or enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So that's a pretty good effect. If you're returning a powerful creature or an enchantment, I think this is solid, full stop, right? That's like a pretty decent effect. And then if you station this for 10, which is very expensive, you get a 5/6 flyer. I mean, I would probably be inclined to say this is pretty strong. The effect's very strong, and then I'd say getting the spacecraft online is difficult, but not horrible. Next, we have the Wedgelight Rammer. It's 3 and a white. It's an artifact spacecraft. When this spacecraft enters, create a 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token. So you create a 2/2 for 4 mana. But if you get this online, it's a 3/4 flyer with First Strike. The effect's so bad, in my opinion. I guess you're getting 2 artifacts on the board, so if you care about artifacts, maybe this is actually really good. But then 9 counters to get a flyer. I mean, the flyer body is nice, the 3/4 First Striker. 9 counters? I mean, this is kind of the theme of the deck, is just like, can I find the time and space to station all this stuff? So in summary, cards that benefit from being tapped, spacecraft, and creatures with high power values that allow for quick stationing are going to be the keys to doing well in this format. Obviously, you have something like the Wedgelight Rammer that we just talked about. You're going to need like 9 counters on it, so you're going to need some high power creatures to get there. Obviously, if you have stuff like Chrome Companion, you're gaining life as you station, so it's going to give you a bit more room to do it. And then the Dawnstrike Vanguard is obviously giving you +1/+1 counters as long as you have 2 tapped creatures a turn. So that's going to be a reliable way to make your board bigger as well. It's just a risky archetype, I'd say. It's very hit or miss, in my opinion. If you hit, you're going to be unbeatable. If you can station stuff out, your opponent's going to be overwhelmed. But if you miss, if they have good artifact removal for your space stations, after you've spent ages stationing them, your opponent's just going to overwhelm you with superior tempo. Next up, we have Green-Blue Ramp. It's the Biomechan Engineer for a green and a blue 2/2 creature insect artificer. This is the gold signpost uncommon for the color pair. When this creature enters, create a lander token. 2 mana, create a lander token, get a 2/2. I think that's good value as is. And then if you pay 8 mana, you draw 2 cards and create a 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token. I mean, 8 mana is a lot, but this is kind of the dream where it's like at 2, this is a good 2 cost. You'll be super happy. And then if you have 8 mana lying around and you have nothing to do with it, draw 2 cards and create a 2/2 is like, oh, it's going to win you the game in card advantage. And so this is a fantastic early card. It's a fantastic late card. It's ramping, it's powerful, and it's a ramp deck, so getting to 8 mana is not as bad. I think this is going to be a really nice signpost uncommon. I think it's one of the better ones, if not the best one. So I wanted to talk about the cards here that are going to allow you to ramp in this color pair. The first one we have is Divert Disaster. It's 1 and a blue. It's an instant. You can counter a target spell unless the controller pays 2. Now that's the downside, right? If they can pay 2 and your counter doesn't go off, that's annoying. But the upside is you get a lander token, so it's going to allow you to ramp. I'm not sure how to analyze this. Obviously, if your counter spell, you know, your opponent can just pay 2 and not come into effect is really annoying. And it makes the counter spell significantly weak if it can just be ignored. The flip side of that is you're getting a free lander token. And there might be a world where the lander token's better than countering for you in some weird scenarios. But then your opponent might just let the counter spell go through if they know that. It's a weird card, but it's just an interesting way, I think, that you might be able to get more lander tokens and ramp up a bit in this color pair. Then we have Galactic Wayfarer. It's 2 and a green creature, human scout. It's a 3/3. When this creature enters, create a lander token. Nothing special, nothing crazy. A 3/3 for 3 mana is good. And then getting a lander token makes it great. I think this is just like, you know, this is the sort of card where like you don't really need to do anything to make it good. It's just good in a vacuum. You're almost always going to want it in probably every green deck. And yeah, if you can ramp up really efficiently and get good creatures out, I think this is perfect. Next, we have the Gene Pollinator for a green. It's a 1/2 artifact creature robot insect. And then if you tap it, you can tap any other untapped permanent you control, and you can add 1 mana of any color. So this can tap land, this can tap your lander tokens, this can tap other creatures as well. It's this weird kind of mix of ramp / fixing, and it's super flexible. So if you have a few of these in your deck, you could theoretically just be 5 colors at that point. And this is something worth noting about a mana ramp deck that has lots of lander tokens, is you can probably just slide into 5 colors very easily. And then worst case scenario, I think your like 2 color splash is also extremely easy. So if you see bombs in the other colors, I think you're pretty happy to pick them up and pretty comfortable to splash them, especially if they're splashable cards, you know, they don't have a lot of colored pips. We have Sammy's Curiosity for a green. It's a sorcery that gives you 2 life and creates a lander token. You can kind of see this as having an extra land. In my mind, I'm just like, can you just have an extra land in your hand? Obviously, you don't get the 2 life, but you don't have to pay 3 mana to get the land down. I guess the upside of paying 3 mana to get a land down in this scenario is you're getting any land, any basic land you want from that lander token. And the other plus side is you're getting an artifact. I think this is going to be pretty average, not amazing, but there's a world where this could be pretty good. And there's an argument you can crack a lander and play a land at the same time. I think this is good, not great, but you know, in this color pair, you'll probably play it a little bit. Orphate's Scroll is a 3 mana artifact. You can tap it to add 1 mana of any color, and then you can sack it for 7 mana, and you draw X cards where X is the number of differently named lands you control. So like I was saying earlier, this can be like a 5-color deck. If you have all the 5 basic lands, maybe a couple of rare lands, theoretically you could be drawing like 6-7 cards from this. It's also ramping, it's also fixing. I think this does get better the more uniquely named lands you get. I mean, if you just have, say, forests and islands, it's just going to draw 2 for 7 mana, which is pretty bad. But I think in a world where you have 3 or 4 differently named lands pretty reliably, drawing 4 cards for 7 mana is, I think, super doable in a ramp deck and is actually going to be really strong. We have the Dauntless Scrapbot for 3 mana. It's an artifact creature robot. It's a 3/1 creature. When this creature enters exile each opponent's graveyard, create a lander token. So the body's not amazing, but it is an artifact, and we do have a lot of artifact matters cards in this format. It's also creating a lander token, which I think is really the big payoff. If your opponent has graveyard synergies and graveyard matters cards, you're also robbing them of being able to make any advantage out of that. I think this is going to be a pretty good card. I think you're going to be pretty happy with it more often than not. And it's not bad for stations as well. It's got 3 power, 1 toughness, so it's not the greatest fighter in the game. We have Edge Rover for a green. It's a 2/2 artifact creature robot scout. Has reach, and when it dies, it creates a lander token. I'm not sure I care about the reach. I think that's going to be irrelevant more often than not. There are a few 1/1 flyer tokens going around in this format, so maybe I'm wrong there. Maybe it will be impactful. It's worth noting it's an artifact. Artifacts are going to matter a lot in this format, and getting a lander token for, I mean, a 1 mana 2/2. I think this is just good. I think this is just a great card, actually. I think you're going to be very happy to have it. You don't want a million 1-drops in your deck anyway, but I think 1 or 2 of these probably like super doable in most scenarios. Next up is the Larval Scoutlander. Is 2 and a green. It's an artifact spacecraft. When it enters, you may sack a land or lander token, and if you do, you search your library for 2 basic lands and put them onto the battlefield tapped. This is basically a way of cracking your lander tokens and getting more value and doing it more cheaper and faster. Or worst case scenario, you're cracking a land to get 2 lands, so you're still ramping, but it's not as effective. I definitely think you're probably wanting to target lander tokens more often than not with this, but it does mana fixing because you can pick your basic lands specifically. And eventually, as you station this up, is a 3/3 flyer, which isn't horrible. I think this is a card that mostly you want for the ramp effects. You're going to need landers, or a lot of available landers, to make sure you can get the payoff. I think if you get the payoff, this is a huge amount of land. It's going to, you could theoretically play a land, play this, get 2 more lands. You could be on 6 mana in no time, right? And really overwhelm your opponent with big playables. We have the Siege Ship Agrarian, 3 and a green. It's a creature insect scientist. It has a 3/3 body, and whenever it gets tapped, it creates a lander token, and then whenever you play a land, it gets a 1/1 counter. I think this card's going to be good in all green decks, just because all of those effects are desirable in every color pair. It's an okay body. Every time you attack or station something, you get a lander. Whenever you play a land, you're getting 1/1 counters. Whenever you crack a lander, you're getting 1/1 counters. It's going to grow really big, be really scary, really easy to get the 1/1 counters. Potentially it will get you tons and tons of lander tokens if you have efficient ways to tap it, or you just have an empty board that you can swing. This card's going to get really out of control really quickly. The only downside I would say is it's a 4 mana 3/3. So if your opponent's on the play, maybe you're behind them, maybe you're going to struggle to swing this and it not get blocked. But swinging this once might be good enough in many scenarios just to get the lander token. I think it's going to be a really great card, and I think you're going to be looking out for it in all the color pairs. Next we have Siege Ship Impact. It's 1 and green. It's an instant. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. If its mana value was 2 or less, create a lander token. Destroying target artifacts or enchantments is an effect that sometimes is a little weak, but having gone over this set, there's so many artifacts. The value of this has gone up tons, this effect anyway. And then if you're targeting something small, which is normally a downside for removal, at least you're getting a lander token for as a payoff. Yeah, I think this is going to be great removal, and it's going to be a great way to ramp. Okay, and for payoffs, I guess in a ramp deck, the true payoffs is just big, powerful, expensive cards that you've ramped up to. So for that reason, we have Fungal Colossus, 6 and a green. It's a 5/5 creature fungus beast. The spell costs X less to cast, where X is the number of differently named. The spell costs X less to cast, where X is the number of differently named lands you control. So as I was saying earlier, you might be playing 5 colors in this color pair as your base, and then playing other colors. If you've got a lot of rare lands that you think are good, then theoretically this is going to be a really cheap 5/5. Worst case scenario, say you just have forests and islands. This is still a 5/5 for 5, which isn't a horrible scenario. But yeah, you're really wanting to play this if you have more than just the basic lands. Next, we have the Pinnacle Kill Ship. It's 7 mana to deal 10 damage, and then eventually it will become a 7/7 flyer. This is a really expensive card, and I think it does have upside, and it will be good in certain scenarios, more towards the average side of things. But I think any deck that's going to play something like this is going to be one that can ramp up to 7 mana very quickly. Next, we have the Glacier Godmaw, 5 and 2 green pips. It's a 6/6 creature Leviathan. It has trample, and when this creature enters, create a lander token. I think that alone is pretty good. It's 7 mana for a 6/6, which isn't amazing. But then the huge upside is whenever a land you control enters, you get a +1 counter and gain vigilance and haste on all your creatures. So you could play this down, play a land, maybe crack the lander that it gives you, and your entire board's stronger, it has vigilance, and everything's hasted if you've played multiple creatures this turn. I think this is the sort of curve topper this deck's really looking for, and I think it's going to be pretty premium to have at least one of these in your deck. Now we have Mouth of the Storm. It's 6 and a blue. It's a 6/6 creature elemental. It has flying. It has ward 2. And when this enters, creatures your opponent controls get -3/-0 until the next turn. So this is the sort of card you play down. A 6/6 flyer with ward 2 is going to be tough for your opponent to deal with a lot of the time. And then their creatures are going to be weaker and just less capable of blocking. So again, curve topper that allows you to push through and try and end the game. And then we have the Survey Mechan for 4 mana. It's an artifact creature robot. It's a 1/3 which has flying. A 1/3 for 4 mana is not that great, but it has hexproof, which is interesting because if you start putting counters on something like this, it can become quite a hard card for your opponent to deal with. And the upside is if you pay 10 mana, it has sacrificed this creature. It deals 3 damage to any target. Target player draws 3 cards and you gain 3 life. This ability costs X less to activate based on the differently named lands you control. So again, this is back to the idea of if you're playing 5 colors, if you're playing lots of rare lands, all of a sudden this effect, which is very expensive and maybe costed too highly, becomes very affordable, very efficient, and will just brutalize your opponent. So in summary, for green-blue, we want to get lands, we want to get lander tokens, we want to ramp up and have high impact cards. Something like Sammy's Curiosity will give us an opportunity to gain life, create lander tokens, get more lands down more efficiently. The Siege Ship Agrarian, as long as you can either station or attack, this card will grow massive and it will give you a bunch of lander tokens. And then once you have a few creatures on the board, if you finish it off with a Glacial Godmaw for 7 mana, and then you play a land or crack a lander, you're going to have all your creatures get bigger, get vigilance, get haste, and you're going to overwhelm your opponent with just raw, high-cost spells. So we've covered all of the archetypes you're going to see in Edges of Eternity. Sometimes there's hidden archetypes like Legendaries Matter, or maybe like a 5-color deck is potentially something we might see because of lander tokens. So I hope this has helped you, and I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you want to support the channel in the future, just subscribe and I'll be dropping more Magic content shortly. See you next time. Bye bye.